Lucas Carter sat at the edge of his twin bed, the dim glow of his desk lamp casting long shadows across his cluttered room. In his trembling hands was the letter he'd been dreading for weeks. The bold, crisp heading at the top of the page bore the iconic seal of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, his dream school. His heart pounded as he skimmed the opening lines. "Dear Mr. Carter, we regret to inform you." The words blurred as his vision clouded with tears. Lucas blinked hard, forcing himself to finish reading the letter. His worst fear had just been confirmed. Rejection? "Are you kidding me?" he whispered, his voice cracking. He crumpled the paper in his fist and threw it across the room. The rejection echoed louder in his mind than the dull thud of the paper hitting the wall. This wasn't supposed to happen. For years, Lucas had poured every ounce of his energy into his passion for technology. By 12, he had reverse-engineered his first drone. At 15, he created an AI algorithm capable of analyzing patient data to predict life-threatening conditions before they occurred. It had earned him local fame, a couple of minor awards, and a few skeptical pats on the back from small-town Wyoming teachers who didn't quite understand what he'd built. But MIT was supposed to get it. They were supposed to see his potential. Instead, they dismissed him as if he were just another high school senior with big dreams and mediocre grades. "Lucas, everything okay up there?" His dad's voice echoed from the garage below. Lucas wiped his face and took a deep breath. "Yeah, I'm fine," he shouted back, though nothing about this moment felt fine. He paced the room, stepping over tangled cords, dismantled gadgets, and stacks of textbooks. His eyes landed on his prototype, a sleek black device no larger than a shoebox, resting proudly on his desk. He'd spent the last 2 years perfecting it. An AI-powered healthcare assistant that could diagnose illnesses faster and more accurately than most doctors. This wasn't just a project for him. It was personal. His mom had passed away 3 years earlier from a heart condition that could have been caught earlier if only the right tools had been available. Lucas had vowed to make sure no one else had to experience that kind of loss. And yet, despite his passion and accomplishments, the world's top engineering school had decided he wasn't good enough. He slumped into his desk chair, staring blankly at his computer screen. His inbox was still open, filled with scholarship rejection emails and unanswered outreach attempts to tech companies he admired. "Maybe I'm not good enough," he thought bitterly. A single tear slid down his cheek before he angrily swiped it away. But as the hours passed, his initial despair began to simmer into something else. Frustration. Frustration with the system, with the doubters, and most of all, with himself for letting them define his worth. Reaching for his phone, Lucas opened Twitter. His fingers hovered over the screen for a moment before he started typing. "They said no, but my invention could save lives. Isn't that worth something?" He attached a photo of his prototype and hit tweet. Lucas leaned back and stared at the screen, his heart racing. He wasn't sure if anyone would even see it, let alone care. But for the first time since opening the letter, he felt a flicker of defiance. What would you do if the world told you no? He murmured to himself. The tweet was live, and the world would soon decide. The morning sun streamed through the cracked blinds of Lucas's room, but he barely noticed. His eyes were glued to his phone. It had been 6 hours since he posted the tweet, and the silence was deafening. No likes, no retweets, and certainly no offers to help. Disheartened, he placed the phone face down on his desk and let his thoughts drift. Memories of his childhood began to bubble to the surface. Lucas had always been different, and not in a way people in small-town Wyoming admired. While other kids played sports or went hunting, Lucas spent his afternoons scavenging the local junkyard for spare parts. At 8 years old, he'd cobbled together his first project, a rudimentary robot made from old car parts and kitchen appliances. "Why can't you just be normal?" His father had grumbled back then, shaking his head as Lucas proudly demonstrated the robot's ability to pick up a wrench and drop it into a bucket. But his mother had been different. She crouched down, her blue eyes sparkling with pride, and said, "You have a gift, Lucas. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." It was her encouragement that fueled him through those early years, even when the other kids called him Robot Boy or Junkyard Genius. When his mom passed away suddenly, Lucas felt like the world had gone silent. The one person who truly understood him was gone. In the months that followed, Lucas buried himself in his work. He taught himself programming from free online courses using the ancient laptop his mom had left behind. It was slow, glitchy, and often overheated, but it was his portal to a bigger world. By the time he turned 15, Lucas had become obsessed with solving a problem no one else seemed to care about, making healthcare more accessible. His mom's death had been preventable, and Lucas knew that with better diagnostic tools, lives could be saved. The idea for his AI healthcare assistant came to him late one night after reading about medical deserts, areas where people had little to no access to doctors. What if there was a device that could act as a doctor in those places? For the next 2 years, Lucas worked tirelessly. He spent his weekends building the hardware and his nights coding the software. Every penny he earned mowing lawns or fixing neighbors' gadgets went into the project. By his junior year of high school, he had a working prototype. But living in a small town had its challenges. Few people understood the significance of what Lucas had created. His teachers commended his effort, but suggested he focus on realistic career goals. His father, a no-nonsense mechanic, supported him in a quiet, reluctant way, offering spare parts when Lucas needed them but never fully believing his son's inventions would amount to much. Lucas couldn't blame him. His dad had spent his whole life fixing engines and paying bills on time. Dreaming big wasn't part of his world. But Lucas dreamed big anyway. And when he received encouragement from a local science fair judge, a professor visiting from the University of Colorado, it fueled his ambition to apply to top engineering schools. MIT had always been the goal. He imagined walking into the hallowed halls where innovators before him had built their legacies. Now, that dream lay in tatters. Lucas's phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. He grabbed it, his heart leaping for a split second, but it was just a reminder for his dad's mechanic shop barbecue later that day. With a sigh, Lucas turned to his desk and stared at his prototype. It had once filled him with pride, but now it felt like a cruel reminder of what he couldn't achieve. Maybe they were right, he muttered to himself. Maybe I'm just some small-town kid with a big imagination. But deep down, a voice, his mom's voice, whispered a different message. You have a gift, Lucas. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Lucas clenched his fists. Maybe MIT had said no, but that didn't mean the world would. He didn't know how yet, but he was going to make them see. For now, though, he had to face another challenge. The inevitable awkward questions at his dad's barbecue about his college plans. He dreaded it, but part of him hoped someone there might spark an idea, or at least a sliver of hope. His journey was far from over, even if it felt like the world was against him. The scent of grilled burgers and sizzling hot dogs wafted through the air as Lucas reluctantly stepped into the backyard. His dad's mechanic shop barbecue was an annual tradition, drawing a mix of grease-streaked workers, their families, and a few curious neighbors looking for a free meal. Lucas had never felt more out of place. There he is, boomed Mr. Hendricks, a burly man who'd been working at the shop for as long as Lucas could remember. He slapped Lucas on the back, nearly knocking the boy off balance. How's the next Einstein doing? You got that scholarship to MIT yet? Lucas forced a tight smile. Not exactly. Don't worry, Hendricks said, chuckling. Plenty of folks do just fine without college. Look at me. He gestured broadly, as if his grease-stained overalls and balding head were a beacon of success. Lucas nodded politely, biting his tongue. He made his way to the far end of the yard, where the crowd thinned out. His father was manning the grill, flipping burgers with a spatula in one hand and holding a beer in the other. Glad you could make it, his dad said gruffly without looking up. Lucas crossed his arms. Did I really have a choice? His dad glanced at him, raising an eyebrow. You're not still sulking over that letter, are you? It's one school, Lucas. Plenty of other places will take you. It's not just one school, Dad. It's MIT, the best engineering school in the country. They're supposed to understand people like me. His dad sighed, shaking his head. You're too young to be this dramatic. Life's full of rejections. You think I haven't been turned down for jobs? You move on. Lucas clenched his jaw, swallowing the sharp retort bubbling up inside. His father just didn't get it. The chatter of the barbecue faded into background noise as Lucas wandered toward the garage, seeking an escape. Inside, the familiar smell of motor oil and rubber greeted him. The garage was his dad's domain, a place of order and practicality where everything had a purpose. But tucked away in a corner was Lucas's sanctuary, a cluttered workbench overflowing with circuit boards, wires, and scraps of metal. He sat down, running his fingers over his prototype. It was sleek, with a black metallic finish and a smooth touchscreen interface. On the inside, it housed an AI model Lucas had trained for years. He'd spent countless nights coding, debugging, and testing, all for this moment, only to have it dismissed by the very people who should have understood its value. Playing with your toy again? Lucas turned sharply to see Nate, a boy his age who worked part-time at the shop. Nate was everything Lucas wasn't: confident, outgoing, and annoyingly charismatic. "It's not a toy," Lucas said, his voice colder than he intended. "Relax, man," Nate said, holding up his hands. "Just messing with you." He leaned against the workbench, peering at the device. "What's it supposed to do again?" Lucas hesitated. Most people didn't bother asking, and when they did, their eyes usually glazed over halfway through his explanation. "It's an AI-powered healthcare assistant," he said cautiously. "It analyzes patient data and predicts health risks. Like, if someone's about to have a heart attack, it can warn them before it happens." Nate whistled low. "Sounds intense. And MIT didn't want you with this thing?" Lucas shook his head. "They probably think I'm just some small-town kid who got lucky with a science fair project." "Yeah, but this thing could save lives, right?" "That's the idea," Lucas said, feeling a faint flicker of pride. Nate straightened up. "Then screw MIT. You don't need them. If this works, you could probably start your own company or something." Lucas laughed bitterly. "And how am I supposed to do that? I don't have connections or money. I'm not Elon Musk." "Not yet," Nate said with a grin. "But who knows? Maybe one day Musk will hear about you and decide to help." Lucas rolled his eyes. "Yeah, right. Like that would ever happen." But as the words left his mouth, a tiny spark of hope flickered in the back of his mind. What if Nate was right? What if there was a way to bypass the traditional path and make people notice him? For the first time that day, Lucas felt the faintest glimmer of possibility. Back outside, the laughter and chatter of the barbecue seemed distant, almost irrelevant. Lucas's fingers hovered over his prototype, his mind racing with ideas. He didn't know how, and he didn't know when, but somehow he was going to make the world see what he was capable of. MIT might not have believed in him, but Lucas Carter wasn't done yet. The next morning, Lucas woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing incessantly on his desk. He groaned, burying his face deeper into his pillow. He'd barely slept the night before, his mind consumed with frustration and faint, fleeting hope. Finally, the buzzing became impossible to ignore. He reached over, fumbling for his phone. When the screen lit up, his breath caught. Notifications flooded in, hundreds of them. Likes, retweets, and replies were pouring in faster than he could read. His heart raced as he scrolled through the chaos. His tweet from the night before, the one he'd thought would vanish into the void, was going viral. One reply caught his eye. "This is incredible work for someone so young. Don't let rejection stop you." Another said, "Why hasn't anyone funded this kid yet? This could save lives." Lucas's chest tightened. Strangers, people he'd never met, were cheering him on, validating the work that had felt invisible for so long. And then he saw it. A name. The name. Elon Musk. It wasn't a reply, but a retweet. Along with it was a simple caption. "Interesting. Let's talk. DM me." For a moment, Lucas thought he was hallucinating. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and stared at the screen again. But it was real. Elon Musk, arguably the most famous innovator of their time, had noticed him. His hands shook as he opened Twitter's messaging feature. Sure enough, there it was. A direct message from the billionaire himself. "Elon Musk. Impressive work. Can you explain the AI's functionality in more detail? And how close are you to a working prototype?" Lucas sat up, his heart pounding. Was this real life? He took a deep breath, trying to steady his shaking hands, and began typing. "Lucas, thank you for reaching out, Mr. Musk. The AI analyzes patient data from wearable devices and medical history, predicting health risks like heart attacks or strokes. The prototype is functional but needs refining for scalability and wider testing. He hesitated for a moment before hitting send. Was that too formal? Too vague? Before he could second-guess himself, another reply came almost instantly. Elon Musk. Let's meet. Where are you located? Lucas stared at the screen in disbelief. He scrambled to reply. Lucas, I'm in Wyoming, sir. A small town called Jackson. The response came quickly again. Elon Musk. I'll send a team to you. Be ready to demonstrate your prototype. We'll discuss next steps after that. Lucas dropped the phone onto his desk, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of his chest. What just happened? He whispered to himself. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Lucas barely ate, barely spoke to his dad, and spent every waking second preparing his prototype. He tightened screws, recalibrated sensors, and triple-checked his code. His small workshop in the garage became a war zone of wires, screens, and tools. By evening, his father finally noticed something was up. What's with all the commotion in here? He asked, leaning against the doorway with his arms crossed. Lucas hesitated. He'd told his dad about his viral tweet earlier, but he hadn't mentioned Elon Musk. It still felt too surreal to say out loud. Might have caught the attention of someone big, Lucas said, trying to sound nonchalant. Big, huh? Like who? Lucas sighed, knowing there was no way to avoid it. Elon Musk. His dad's eyebrows shot up. The Elon Musk? Tesla? SpaceX? Mars guy? Yeah, he's sending a team to check out my work. His dad let out a low whistle. Well, I'll be damned. Guess you're not just some small-town kid after all. Lucas couldn't tell if it was pride or surprise in his dad's voice, but he didn't have time to dwell on it. The clock was ticking, and every second mattered. By the time he finally collapsed onto his bed that night, exhaustion overwhelmed him. But as he stared at the ceiling, one thought echoed in his mind. This was his shot, his one chance to prove to the world and to himself that he belonged. And he wasn't going to waste it. The morning arrived with an air of anticipation that Lucas had never experienced before. He barely slept, but adrenaline coursed through his veins as he paced back and forth in his garage workshop, making last-minute adjustments to his prototype. The garage was cleaner than it had ever been. Lucas had pushed aside his father's toolboxes and oil cans to create an uncluttered space for the demonstration. His dad stood in the corner, arms crossed, silently observing his son's feverish preparation. You sure this thing is ready? His dad asked. It has to be, Lucas replied, his voice taut with nerves. At exactly 10 a.m., a sleek black SUV pulled into their gravel driveway. Lucas's heart leapt into his throat. A team of 3 people stepped out, all dressed in sharp, professional attire. The woman leading the group introduced herself as Sarah Trent, a technical advisor for Musk's AI ventures. Her sharp gaze immediately scanned the surroundings, taking in the small-town simplicity of Lucas's home and garage. Lucas Carter? She asked, extending a hand. Lucas nodded, swallowing hard as he shook her hand. That's me. This is Dr. Patel. She gestured to a tall man with glasses. And this is Cameron, our systems engineer. Nice to meet you all, Lucas said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his chest. Sarah glanced toward the garage. Is this where the magic happens? Lucas smiled nervously. It's not much, but yeah, this is my workshop. The prototype's ready to go. They followed him inside, their polished shoes clicking against the concrete floor. The contrast between their sleek professionalism and Lucas's cluttered, makeshift lab couldn't have been starker. Tell us what we're looking at, Sarah said, her tone all business. Lucas took a deep breath and launched into his explanation. This is MedAI, an AI-powered healthcare assistant designed for underserved communities. It uses patient data from wearable devices and basic medical history to predict health risks, such as heart attacks or strokes, and provides actionable recommendations. Dr. Patel leaned in, examining the device. What kind of data does it analyze, and how does it ensure accuracy? Lucas handed him a tablet connected to the prototype. It uses biometrics like heart rate variability, oxygen levels, and blood pressure, combined with patterns in user-reported symptoms. The AI model was trained on public health datasets and validated against clinical guidelines to minimize errors. Sarah raised an eyebrow. That's impressive for a high schooler. Can you show us how it works? Lucas nodded and activated the prototype. The device came to life, displaying a sleek interface on its touchscreen. He ran a demonstration using a dataset he had programmed earlier, simulating a patient with early signs of cardiovascular distress. Based on the data, Lucas explained, MedAI predicts a 78% likelihood of a cardiac event within the next 48 hours. It recommends contacting a physician immediately and provides a list of local clinics or telemedicine options. Dr. Patel nodded thoughtfully, while Cameron furiously jotted down notes. Sarah remained silent, her expression unreadable. After the demonstration, Sarah turned to Lucas. You built all of this on your own? Lucas hesitated. Well, I've had help from online resources and open source tools, but yeah, I did most of the work myself. And how did you fund this? Lawn mowing money, fixing gadgets for neighbors, and scrounging for spare parts, Lucas said with a faint smile. Sarah exchanged a glance with Dr. Patel. Then she turned back to Lucas. This is impressive. Not perfect, but promising. Elon was right to flag your work. Lucas blinked. So, what happens now? Sarah smiled faintly. We'll report back to him, but I can tell you this much. He's serious about helping young innovators like you. Don't be surprised if you get an invitation to California soon. Lucas's heart skipped a beat. California? Like SpaceX or Tesla? Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Sarah said, though her tone hinted at possibilities beyond Lucas's imagination. For now, keep refining this. If you get the call, be ready. The team packed up and left as swiftly as they had arrived, leaving Lucas standing in the driveway with his dad. Well, his dad said after a long silence, looks like you might actually be onto something. Lucas grinned. Might be. His dad chuckled and patted him on the shoulder. All right, fine. You're onto something. Proud of you, kid. Lucas's smile faded slightly as he turned to look at the garage. He still had a long road ahead, but for the first time, the path didn't seem so impossible. As the SUV disappeared down the road, Lucas whispered to himself, this is just the beginning. 2 weeks passed, and with every day that went by, Lucas grew more anxious. He spent every waking hour refining MedAI, tweaking its algorithms, and improving its interface. The anticipation of hearing back from Musk's team consumed him. What if they decided he wasn't ready? His dad, surprisingly, had started pitching in. Though he didn't understand the technical side of things, he made sure Lucas ate, stayed hydrated, and occasionally offered a few encouraging grunts as he passed through the garage. One evening, as Lucas adjusted a glitchy sensor, his phone rang. He froze, staring at the screen. Unknown number. Heart pounding, he answered. Hello? Lucas Carter? Yes, this is Lucas. This is Elon. Lucas nearly dropped the phone. He scrambled to switch it to speaker mode, his hands trembling. Mr. Musk, he managed to squeak. Call me Elon, the voice on the other end said, casual but distinct. I had my team look over your work. It's impressive. Very impressive. You've got raw talent, Lucas. Thank you, sir. I mean, Elon, Lucas stammered, feeling his face flush. Here's the deal, Elon continued. I want to fund the development of MedAI, but it's not just about the money. I think you need the right environment to grow this idea and yourself. How would you feel about moving to California? I can offer you a spot in one of our innovation labs, surrounded by experts who can help you take this to the next level. Lucas's knees nearly gave out. He grabbed the edge of the workbench to steady himself. You're serious? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't waste time joking about potential breakthroughs, Elon replied, a hint of amusement in his tone. But this isn't charity. You'll have to work hard, prove you belong there. Think you're up for it? Lucas straightened, his confidence growing with every word. Yes, absolutely. Good. My team will be in touch to arrange everything. Pack your bags, Lucas. Your life is about to change. The call ended as abruptly as it began. Lucas stood there, staring at his phone, the words echoing in his mind. Pack your bags. Lucas, His dad's voice broke through his thoughts. He was standing in the doorway, holding a plate of sandwiches. You all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. Lucas turned, a grin breaking across his face. It was him, Elon Musk. He wants me to move to California and work in one of his labs. His dad's jaw dropped, the sandwiches nearly sliding off the plate. California? You're serious? Lucas nodded, feeling a surge of excitement and nervousness all at once. This is it, Dad. This is the chance I've been waiting for. For a moment, his dad said nothing, just staring at him with an expression Lucas couldn't quite read. Then, finally, he nodded. Well, I guess we'd better start packing. That night, Lucas barely slept, not because of worry, but because of excitement. For the first time, his future didn't feel like a distant dream. It was real, and it was just beginning. The day Lucas left for California was bittersweet. His small town of Jackson, with its snow-capped mountains and quiet streets, had been his whole world. Now, he was stepping into something far bigger, far more intimidating. His dad drove him to the airport in their old pickup truck. The ride was mostly silent, except for the occasional hum of the engine and the sound of gravel crunching under the tires. You nervous? His dad asked, breaking the quiet. Lucas glanced out the window, watching the familiar scenery blur by. Yeah, a little, but mostly excited. His dad nodded, gripping the steering wheel tightly. You'll do fine. Just don't forget where you came from, all right? Lucas smiled. I won't, Dad. At the airport, they stood awkwardly at the gate. Lucas's flight was boarding soon, but his dad seemed reluctant to leave. Finally, his dad pulled him into a hug, patting him firmly on the back. Proud of you, kid, he said gruffly, his voice thick with emotion. Go show him what you're made of. I will, Lucas promised, feeling a lump rise in his throat. The flight to California felt like a blur. Lucas spent most of it staring out the window, his mind racing with possibilities. What would the lab be like? Who would he meet? Was he really ready for this? When the plane landed in Los Angeles, a driver holding a sign with his name was waiting for him. The drive to the facility was like entering another world. Skyscrapers loomed overhead, and the streets buzzed with energy. It was overwhelming, but also exhilarating. The driver pulled into a sleek, modern complex that looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. Large glass panels reflected the bright California sun, and the building's architecture seemed to defy gravity with its bold, futuristic design. This is it, the driver said, handing Lucas his bags. Lucas stepped out, taking a deep breath. A woman in a tailored suit approached him, her smile warm but professional. Lucas Carter? She asked, extending her hand. Welcome. I'm Amanda, Elon's operations manager. Let me show you around. Lucas shook her hand and followed her inside. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior. Wide open spaces filled with state-of-the-art equipment, bustling teams of scientists and engineers immersed in their work. This will be your workspace, Amanda said, stopping in front of a glass-walled office. Inside was a high-tech workstation, complete with monitors, tools, and a prototype testing area. Elon wanted you to have everything you need to refine Med-AI. Lucas stepped inside, running his fingers over the polished surface of the desk. This is amazing. Don't get too comfortable, Amanda said with a chuckle. Elon's expecting you in a meeting shortly. He wants to hear your vision for Med-AI in person. Lucas's stomach flipped. In person? With him? She nodded. He likes to stay hands-on with projects that interest him. Lucas quickly set his bags down and straightened his jacket. I'm ready. Amanda led him to a conference room where Elon Musk was seated at the head of the table, surrounded by a handful of senior engineers and advisors. The room was filled with a palpable energy, as though every conversation carried the weight of shaping the future. Elon looked up as Lucas entered, offering a small nod. Lucas, good to see you. Sit down. Lucas took a seat, trying to steady his breathing. Your concept for Med-AI is impressive, Elon began. But I'm not just looking for ideas. I want to know how you see this changing the world. Why does this matter to you? Lucas took a deep breath. Med-AI matters because healthcare should be proactive, not reactive. Too many people suffer or die because they don't have access to early detection tools. This can change that. It can give people, especially in underserved communities, a chance to take control of their health before it's too late. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Elon leaned back in his chair, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Good answer," he said. "Now let's make it happen." The rest of the meeting was a whirlwind of questions, feedback, and brainstorming. Lucas held his own, explaining the technical aspects of MedAI and taking notes on the team's suggestions. When the meeting ended, Elon stood and clapped Lucas on the shoulder. "You've got potential, kid. Keep up the momentum." As Lucas left the conference room, his head buzzed with ideas and possibilities. For the first time, he felt like he wasn't just chasing a dream. He was living it. Lucas's first week in the lab was anything but smooth. The cutting-edge equipment was incredible, but it also came with a steep learning curve. The engineers and scientists he worked with spoke a language of advanced technical jargon, and while Lucas was brilliant, he quickly realized there were gaps in his knowledge. On his first full day, he was assigned to work with Dr. Aisha Rahman, an AI expert who had been with Musk's team for years. She was sharp, no nonsense, and had little patience for inefficiency. "All right, Lucas," she said, gesturing toward a complex schematic displayed on the massive screen in their shared workspace. "We need to optimize the prediction algorithm for MedAI. Right now, it's too resource-intensive for scalable deployment. Any ideas?" Lucas hesitated. He understood the core of what she was saying, but the specifics felt like they were just out of reach. Maybe we could simplify the feature set by focusing on the most predictive variables?" Dr. Rahman raised an eyebrow. "That's a start. But how will you compensate for the loss of secondary data correlations that improve accuracy?" Lucas's cheeks burned. I'll have to run some tests." "Good answer," she said, her tone softening slightly. "But don't take too long. In this lab, we solve problems quickly or we get left behind." The next few days were a trial by fire. Lucas spent hours poring over technical documentation, running simulations, and trying to keep up with his colleagues' rapid-fire discussions. He made progress, but he also made mistakes, small missteps that felt monumental in such a high-stakes environment. One evening, as the lab emptied out and most of the team headed home, Lucas stayed behind, staring at the screen. His latest model still wasn't performing as well as he'd hoped. "You're still here," a voice said from behind him. Lucas turned to see Cameron, the systems engineer who had been part of the team that first visited his garage. Cameron was holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Lucas and pulled up a chair. "Thanks," Lucas said, taking a sip. Cameron leaned back, crossing his arms. "You're doing fine, you know." Lucas snorted. "Doesn't feel like it. Everyone here is so far ahead of me. They're ahead because they've been doing this for years." "You just got here," Cameron said. "Don't forget, you're here because you've got something none of us had at your age. Raw, untapped brilliance. The rest is just learning, and that takes time." Lucas nodded, the weight on his chest easing slightly. "It just feels like there's so much to catch up on." "There is," Cameron said with a grin. "But if there's one thing I've learned working here, it's that everyone struggles at first. Even Elon." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Elon Musk struggled?" "Sure," Cameron said. "You think Tesla, SpaceX, or Neuralink came together perfectly the first time? He failed more times than anyone here. That's why he's so good at what he does now." Lucas thought about that as Cameron stood and stretched. "Go home, Lucas," Cameron said. "This place will still be here tomorrow. So will the problems. But you'll solve them, one step at a time." As Cameron walked away, Lucas sat back in his chair, staring at the screen. He still had a long way to go, but for the first time, he realized he didn't have to figure it all out at once. Before leaving, he scribbled a note in his journal. Failing isn't the end. It's part of the process. The next morning, he returned to the lab with a renewed sense of determination. He wasn't just a kid with a big idea anymore. He was part of something bigger, and he was ready to prove he belonged. Lucas entered the lab the next day, a fire in his chest. His mistakes weren't failures, they were lessons. And today, he was ready to put those lessons to work. The challenge was clear. Optimize MedAI's prediction algorithm to be faster, more efficient, and scalable for real-world deployment. The key issue was its resource-intensive nature, which made it impractical for widespread use, especially in underserved areas with limited access to high-end hardware. Lucas stood at his workstation, reviewing the notes he had jotted down the night before. He took a deep breath, opened his laptop, and began typing. He spent hours analyzing the data. Every time the model failed, he dissected the results, asking himself why. The lab buzzed around him, his colleagues bouncing ideas off each other, troubleshooting problems, and collaborating on their own projects. But Lucas was entirely in his zone. By mid-afternoon, a breakthrough emerged. Lucas realized that by restructuring the way the AI processed data inputs, he could drastically reduce the computational power needed. Instead of analyzing the entire dataset in one go, the algorithm could break it into smaller, more manageable chunks, analyzing only the most relevant features first. Excited, he built a prototype version of the new algorithm and ran the first test. The results were promising. The runtime had decreased by 40%, and while the accuracy dipped slightly, it was still within an acceptable range for the next round of refinements. Lucas grinned, his heart racing. He was onto something. "Cameron," he called, waving over his new mentor. Cameron walked over, sipping his ever-present coffee. "What's up, rookie?" "Check this out," Lucas said, pointing to his screen. "I restructured the data flow. It's faster and uses fewer resources. What do you think?" Cameron leaned in, examining the results. His eyebrows lifted, and he let out a low whistle. "Not bad, Lucas. Not bad at all. This could actually work." Encouraged by Cameron's response, Lucas decided to show Dr. Rahman. Approaching her workstation, he hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Dr. Rahman, I think I might have found a way to optimize the algorithm." She looked up from her computer, her sharp eyes narrowing slightly. "Show me." Lucas explained his approach, walking her through the changes he'd made. Dr. Rahman was silent as she reviewed his work, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded. "It's a good start. Run more tests to validate it, and if the results hold up, we'll integrate it into the next iteration." Lucas nodded, his chest swelling with pride. That evening, as the lab emptied out, Lucas stayed late to fine-tune his model. He felt a spark he hadn't felt in weeks, the thrill of solving a problem, of moving closer to his dream. As he saved his work and prepared to head home, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his dad. "Dad, how's it going out there, kid?" Lucas smiled and quickly replied, "Tough, but I'm figuring it out. Miss you." The reply came almost instantly. "Dad, proud of you. Keep at it." Lucas stared at the screen for a moment, a lump forming in his throat. His dad had always been a man of few words, but those words meant everything. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about how far he had come. He was just a kid from Jackson, but here he was, holding his own in a world-class lab, working on something that could change lives. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe that he wasn't just a genius kid with a big idea. He was becoming the person who could make that idea a reality. As the weeks passed, Lucas found himself immersed deeper and deeper into the demanding world of the lab. The challenge wasn't just technical anymore, it was emotional. The pressure to succeed was palpable, especially as Elon Musk began to take a more direct interest in MedAI's progress. Lucas was called into a strategy meeting one morning, along with Dr. Rahman, Cameron, and several senior members of the team. Elon Musk sat at the head of the table, his usual cool, calculating demeanor in place. He didn't waste any time with pleasantries. "All right, let's get to the point," Elon said, his voice sharp. "We've been funding MedAI for a while now, and I need to know, where do we stand?" Lucas, who had been working day and night on refining the algorithm, felt the weight of those words pressing down on him. He took a deep breath and spoke up. "We've made significant progress. The algorithm is now 40% more efficient, and we're refining it further with a modular approach that will allow it to scale more easily." Dr. Rahman nodded in agreement. "We've also begun testing the prototype in real-world environments. The initial results are promising, but we need to run more trials before we can push for broader deployment." Elon leaned forward, his eyes locking onto Lucas. "How much longer?" Lucas's pulse quickened. "A few weeks. We're almost there, just need to fine-tune a few things." Elon stared at him for a long moment. Then, he stood up, pacing slowly around the room. The thing is, Lucas, time is not on our side. MedAI has the potential to change healthcare as we know it, but it needs to be ready. Yesterday, I don't care about timelines. I care about results. The pressure in the room became suffocating. Elon was known for his unrelenting pursuit of excellence, but today, he seemed even more intense than usual. Lucas could feel his hands start to sweat. He had worked hard. So hard. But was it enough? We're doing everything we can, Lucas said, trying to keep his voice steady. But if we rush, we risk sacrificing quality. MedAI needs to be perfect. Elon stopped pacing and turned to face him. Then make it perfect, and do it fast. There was a brief silence as everyone in the room exchanged uneasy glances. The meeting ended abruptly, with Elon walking out without another word. The pressure Lucas felt was like a heavy weight sitting on his chest. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away, that the pressure was building to an unbearable point. He was afraid that one mistake, one wrong move, could undo everything. That night, Lucas sat in front of his computer, staring at the lines of code. It felt like he was so close to a breakthrough, yet so far away. He could hear the quiet hum of the lab around him, but the silence in his mind was deafening. Suddenly, a ping echoed from his phone. It was a message from Cameron. Cameron, you okay, Lucas? You've been awfully quiet lately. Lucas looked at the message for a moment before typing back. Yeah, just a lot on my plate. Elon's pushing hard, and I'm feeling the weight of it. Cameron, I know, but don't forget why you're here. You've got the skills, the drive, and the heart. Just remember, even Elon wasn't born knowing everything. He got where he is by failing and learning. So don't be afraid to fail. It's part of the process. Lucas paused, letting Cameron's words sink in. He had always been afraid of failing. But maybe, just maybe, failure wasn't something to fear. It was a part of the journey. The next morning, Lucas woke up with a renewed sense of determination. He didn't have all the answers, but he wasn't alone. He had his team, his mentors, and the knowledge that even the greatest minds had stumbled before him. Today, he would push forward. Today, he would make MedAI the success it was meant to be. And no matter how long it took, he would never stop believing in his ability to make it happen. As he walked into the lab, the weight on his shoulders felt just a little lighter. The battle wasn't over yet, but Lucas knew one thing for sure. He was in the fight to win. The following days were a blur of hard work, sleepless nights, and relentless testing. Lucas poured himself into MedAI like never before. The sense of urgency Elon had instilled in him gnawed at his every thought. Time was a luxury they couldn't afford, and yet, despite all the pressure, Lucas felt a growing sense of clarity. One afternoon, as Lucas sat hunched over his desk, analyzing the most recent batch of test results, something clicked. He noticed a pattern in the data that he hadn't seen before, a small anomaly that, when addressed, could dramatically improve the system's predictive power. He was so absorbed in his discovery that he didn't hear Dr. Rahman approach. Lucas, she said, her voice startling him from his focus. You've been at this for hours. Take a break. Lucas blinked and rubbed his eyes, realizing just how much time had passed. I think I found something. A way to increase the prediction accuracy by eliminating redundant data processing. I'll need to test it, but I think this could be it. Dr. Rahman leaned over his shoulder, peering at the screen. Let me see. Lucas quickly ran through the adjustments he had made, explaining his reasoning behind the changes. Dr. Rahman studied the data for a moment before nodding. This is solid. But you're right, it's untested. Get a prototype running, and let's see if it holds up. Lucas's heart raced as he began the process of implementing the new approach into MedAI's framework. Every line of code felt like it had the potential to either be the key to success or the catalyst for failure. He was all too aware of the stakes. By the time evening fell, Lucas had a working prototype. He couldn't shake the anxiety bubbling in his stomach as he initiated the first round of tests. His mind raced with possibilities. Would the data hold? Would the prediction accuracy improve? The first test finished, and Lucas's breath caught in his throat as he checked the results. Accuracy, 92%. He couldn't believe it. The prediction accuracy had jumped by 15%, and the system was still operating at a fraction of the computational cost. Holy, Lucas whispered under his breath. He ran the test again and again. Each time, the results were consistent. The system was working better than it ever had before. Excited, Lucas called Dr. Rahman over to his desk. She walked in, her eyes scanning the screen as he presented the results. "This is extraordinary," she said, her tone one of genuine surprise. "You've cracked it, Lucas. This could change everything." Just then, the door to the lab opened, and Elon Musk walked in. He was dressed in his usual black t-shirt and jeans, his face set in its familiar, unreadable expression. Lucas stood up, his heart pounding as he looked at Elon. "Mr. Musk, I think I found the solution. The system's efficiency and accuracy are significantly improved." Elon didn't say anything at first. He walked over to the screen, his eyes quickly scanning the results. Then, without missing a beat, he turned back to Lucas and nodded. "Good work," he said, his voice cool but approving. "This is what we needed. Now take it to the next level." Lucas couldn't help but feel a wave of pride wash over him. The man who had created some of the most innovative companies in the world was acknowledging his work. But as quickly as the pride swelled, the pressure returned. "What's the next level?" Lucas asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Elon glanced at Dr. Rahman, who answered for him. "Now we need to focus on scalability. We've got the algorithm working, but we need to ensure it can handle massive datasets from different healthcare systems without compromising performance." Lucas nodded. The work wasn't over, but the breakthrough he had just made felt like a giant leap forward. He was closer than ever to turning MedAI into a reality, a product that could actually transform healthcare across the globe. Later that night, as Lucas sat alone in the lab, reflecting on the day, he couldn't help but smile. He had done it. He had faced the pressure, the doubts, and the obstacles, and he had come out on top. But he knew this was just the beginning. The road ahead was still long, and the stakes were higher than ever. He wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. With the breakthrough Lucas had achieved, the team's spirits were high. For the first time in months, there was a palpable sense of hope in the lab. The system had exceeded expectations, but as Dr. Rahman had pointed out, they couldn't stop there. Now came the real challenge: scalability. MedAI's success relied on its ability to analyze vast amounts of data from diverse healthcare systems around the world without faltering. Lucas and the team threw themselves into the next phase of development. It was one thing to make the algorithm work on a small scale. It was another entirely to make it work in real-world environments, with millions of data points coming in from all directions. 4 days, Lucas worked tirelessly, testing the system with different datasets, simulating everything from private hospitals to public clinics, and even emergency care facilities in remote areas. He ran simulations, tweaked the architecture, and adjusted the flow of data in ways that made his head spin. Despite the immense pressure, Lucas felt a rush of exhilaration. This was the kind of challenge he thrived on. Each time the system performed better, he saw a glimmer of hope. If they could make this work, MedAI could truly be a game changer. But not every test was perfect. One late evening, after yet another round of testing, Lucas noticed something strange. The system, which had been running smoothly, suddenly started to lag. Data wasn't processing as quickly as it should have been. His heart dropped. He checked the logs. The algorithm had failed to adjust to an unexpected input, causing a bottleneck that slowed everything down. Lucas cursed under his breath, his fingers racing over the keyboard as he tried to isolate the issue. He could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders again. They couldn't afford setbacks like this, not now. Frustrated, he stepped away from his desk, running his hands through his hair. "What went wrong?" he muttered to himself. He had made so many improvements, but now, this? His phone buzzed. It was a message from Cameron. "Cameron, hey, I'm heading out. You coming with? You look like you need a break." Lucas glanced at the clock. 3 a.m. He knew he should take a break. He was pushing himself too hard, but he couldn't walk away without solving the issue. Instead of replying to Cameron, Lucas dug in. He rechecked every line of code and ran the simulation again. This time, he spotted it, a simple oversight in the data pre-processing step. It was a minor bug, but one that had caused the whole system to stumble. He fixed it, ran the tests again, and success. The system was back on track, running faster than before. But the relief Lucas felt was short-lived. He knew this wouldn't be the last challenge. There were still so many unknowns ahead. Exhausted, he finally texted Cameron. "Lucas, thanks for checking in. I'm going to need a few more hours, but I'll catch up with you tomorrow." "Cameron, you got this. Don't burn out, all right?" Lucas chuckled. It was good to have friends who cared, but the truth was, he was already too far in. The following days were filled with more late nights and endless testing. But as the system continued to stabilize, Lucas felt something shift inside of him. For the first time, he realized that this was more than just an algorithm. MedAI had the potential to save lives, to revolutionize healthcare. And he was the one responsible for making that happen. Elon Musk dropped by the lab again. This time, his presence was more than just a casual check-in. There was a sense of urgency in his step, a tension in his voice. "Where do we stand?" he asked, his gaze sweeping the room. Dr. Rahman stood up, walking over to the monitor. "The system's ready for its final round of tests. The core algorithm is working, and the scalability tests have been successful. But we still need to fine-tune a few aspects before we move into deployment." Elon nodded. "Fine-tune it faster. We don't have forever." Lucas could feel the pressure building once again. The world was waiting. As Elon left the lab, Lucas felt his heart racing. The stakes had never been higher. But he wasn't backing down now. That night, Lucas lay in bed staring at the ceiling, exhausted but driven. He had spent years dreaming of this moment, but now that it was here, it was nothing like he had imagined. The weight of responsibility was immense, and yet, he couldn't help but feel that he was on the brink of something bigger than himself. MedAI wasn't just his project anymore. It was his legacy, and he would see it through, no matter what. With each passing day, the pressure intensified. The final phase of testing was underway, and Lucas knew that this was where everything would either come together or fall apart. MedAI had made incredible strides, but they were about to push the system to its absolute limits. Lucas spent long hours fine-tuning every aspect of the algorithm. The system had shown promise in initial trials, but this was different. Now they were testing it with real-world data, imperfect, noisy, and inconsistent. Hospitals weren't clean labs. They were filled with unpredictability. Every variable had to be accounted for. One morning, Lucas walked into the lab to find Dr. Rahman and Cameron already at their stations. The air was thick with anticipation. "You ready for this?" Cameron asked, his voice low but filled with energy. "I hope so," Lucas replied, his own nerves hidden behind a mask of determination. Dr. Rahman glanced at them, her focus unwavering. "The real test starts today. If this works, MedAI goes live." Lucas took a deep breath and moved to his workstation. He began inputting the final round of data and configuring the system for its largest test yet. MedAI was about to analyze data from a network of hospitals in multiple regions, data that varied in format, quality, and scale. If it could handle this, it could handle anything. The system began processing. As the minutes ticked by, Lucas couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. Would it crash? Would it fail to deliver accurate results? Was all this work about to amount to nothing? Then, the numbers began to populate on the screen. The prediction models were taking shape, the errors were minimal, and the system was adapting to the irregularities in the data. Lucas's heart pounded. It was working. For the first time in days, Lucas allowed himself to smile. But the test wasn't over yet. The final challenge loomed. As the hours stretched on, the team continued to test various scenarios. MedAI was pushing through, but it wasn't flawless yet. There were still areas of vulnerability, small errors that, if not addressed, could cause major problems down the line. It was then that Lucas saw something that stopped him in his tracks. A set of medical records from an emergency care facility, mixed, incomplete, and poorly formatted, was causing the algorithm to misinterpret a diagnosis. The potential ramifications of this mistake were significant. If MedAI misinterpreted a diagnosis in the field, it could mean a missed opportunity to save a life. Dr. Rahman, noticing Lucas's expression, walked over to his desk. "What is it?" "I think we have a major flaw," Lucas said, pointing to the screen. "The system isn't handling disorganized data properly. If we don't fix this, it could undermine everything." Cameron leaned over, peering at the monitor. But this is exactly the kind of data MedAI will face in real-world applications. If we can't handle this, then what do we do? Lucas felt the weight of the question. This was a critical failure, and they were running out of time. He opened up the system's code, working quickly to isolate the error. As he did, the clock seemed to tick louder in his ears. The pressure mounted, and the sense of urgency grew. The world was watching, and Lucas was the one holding the key to whether MedAI would make it or break it. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, he found the issue. A small gap in the data normalization process was causing the system to misread and improperly group critical data points. He adjusted the algorithm to better handle fragmented, incomplete data. With shaky hands, Lucas ran the simulation again. The system processed the new data without a hitch. The errors were gone. The predictions were accurate. MedAI had passed its final test. Lucas leaned back in his chair, exhaustion and relief washing over him in waves. "We did it," he whispered. Dr. Rahman smiled, her eyes gleaming with pride. "We did." Cameron clapped him on the back. "Told you you had it in you." Just then, Elon Musk entered the room, his face serious as always. But when he saw the results on the screen, his expression softened. "Well done, Lucas," Elon said, his voice calm but filled with approval. "MedAI is ready. You've changed the game." Lucas stood up, feeling a mix of disbelief and pride. "We've all worked hard for this." Elon's gaze sharpened. "You especially. This is your moment. You've earned it." As Elon left, Lucas turned to Dr. Rahman and Cameron. He felt a deep sense of gratitude to them, to the team that had made this possible. He hadn't done it alone. They had all pushed the boundaries, and together, they had created something revolutionary. Later that night, Lucas sat alone in the lab, staring at the glowing screen. MedAI was no longer just an idea. It was a living, breathing system that could potentially reshape healthcare forever. But as he reflected on the journey, he knew that this was just the beginning. The real work, the real challenge, was still ahead of them. The pressure, the sleepless nights, the doubts, they had been worth it. Because now, MedAI was ready to change the world. And Lucas was ready to lead it. The day had finally arrived. After months of tireless work, sleepless nights, and countless setbacks, MedAI was ready to be revealed to the world. Lucas stood in front of the large conference room at Tesla's headquarters, his heart pounding in his chest. The presentation wasn't just for a small group of investors or tech enthusiasts, it was for the world. The team had worked around the clock to ensure that MedAI's capabilities were flawless. Every detail had been examined, every potential glitch ironed out. Today, MedAI would prove that it could live up to its promise of transforming healthcare. Lucas was about to step onto a stage, not just to present a product, but to change lives. MedAI wasn't just a machine. It was a tool that could diagnose medical conditions more accurately than any human doctor, predict health trends, and even suggest personalized treatments based on a patient's unique genetic makeup. The potential was mind-blowing. "Hey," Cameron said, pulling Lucas from his thoughts. He grinned, looking confident in his suit. "You good?" Lucas nodded, trying to steady his nerves. "Yeah, just a little nervous." Cameron clapped him on the back. "Don't be. You've done the hard part. Now just show them what we've built." Dr. Rahman entered the room with a clipboard in hand, her expression focused and determined. "Everything's ready. The demo will run smoothly. It's time to make history, Lucas." Lucas took a deep breath. He had done this countless times, coding, debugging, testing. But this was different. Today, the world would be watching. The lights dimmed as the presentation began. Lucas and his team walked to the front of the room, where a massive screen stood, ready to showcase MedAI in action. Elon Musk took his place at the podium first. The room went silent as the Tesla and SpaceX CEO addressed the crowd. "Today, we are on the cusp of a revolution," Elon said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of innovation. "We've built something that could change healthcare as we know it. MedAI is not just a program. It's the future of medicine, capable of diagnosing, predicting, and ultimately saving lives. And it's only just beginning." He turned to Lucas, who stepped forward to the microphone. The room erupted in applause, but Lucas could barely hear it over the pounding in his ears. Taking a deep breath, Lucas began. "Thank you, Mr. Musk. And thank you to everyone here today. What we've created is not just a technological breakthrough. It's a leap forward for humanity." The screen flickered to life behind him, showing the MedAI interface. Lucas walked the audience through the system, showcasing its ability to process real-world medical data, diagnose conditions, and offer treatment recommendations. As the system worked seamlessly, the audience reacted with growing amazement. Lucas demonstrated how MedAI could analyze medical records, cross-reference them with an extensive database of research, and provide a diagnosis in mere seconds. He walked them through a simulation of a patient with rare symptoms, showing how MedAI quickly identified the condition and recommended a course of treatment. The reactions were immediate. Gasps of astonishment filled the room, followed by applause. Lucas could feel the weight of what they had accomplished, the lives they could save, the potential they had unlocked. But then came the real test, a live demonstration. Lucas connected the system to a remote hospital network, accessing real patient data in real time. The data flowed in, fragmented and imperfect, just as it would in any real-world healthcare setting. MedAI began to process the information, seamlessly adapting to the flaws and irregularities of the data. Within seconds, it produced a diagnosis. There was a collective gasp in the room. This wasn't just theoretical. It was happening in real time. Lucas smiled, feeling the adrenaline surge through him. This was what they had worked for, the moment when it all came together. He stepped back from the podium, allowing Elon to take the stage again. "MedAI is now ready for deployment," Elon said, his voice carrying an air of finality. "This is just the beginning. The future of medicine is here, and it starts today." The room erupted into applause, and for a moment, Lucas stood there, overwhelmed. This was the moment he had dreamed about. Years of hard work, countless failures, and one breakthrough after another had led him here. The applause, the recognition, it felt surreal. But deep down, Lucas knew that the real journey had just begun. This was no longer about building a product. It was about transforming healthcare, improving lives, and ultimately, saving people. As the crowd filed out of the room, many rushing to speak with Elon and the other executives, Lucas remained in the back, watching as the team celebrated their success. He felt a tap on his shoulder and turned to see Dr. Rahman and Cameron standing beside him, grinning from ear to ear. "We did it," Cameron said, his voice full of excitement. Dr. Rahman nodded. "It's more than we ever imagined." Lucas smiled, though he knew the hard work wasn't over. There were still bugs to fix, patients to help, and systems to implement. The world had just seen the potential of MedAI, but now, they had to ensure it lived up to that potential in every hospital, in every clinic, and in every corner of the world. "We did it," Lucas repeated, his voice steady with determination. "But we're just getting started." And with that, Lucas knew that MedAI was no longer just a dream. It was the future, and he would be at the forefront of that revolution. The world had applauded MedAI's unveiling, but as Lucas quickly learned, applause didn't guarantee success. The excitement surrounding the launch was palpable, but now came the difficult part, making sure the system was implemented on a global scale. And with this scale came unforeseen complications. The first challenge arose just days after the launch. Hospitals began to roll out MedAI, but not everything was as smooth as it had appeared during the demonstration. Some healthcare professionals, particularly those with years of experience, were skeptical about relying on an AI system for diagnosis. They had spent their entire careers honing their instincts, and the idea of trusting a machine was unsettling. Lucas, along with Dr. Rahman and Cameron, received urgent calls from hospital directors across the country. They were getting pushback from doctors and nurses who were hesitant to trust MedAI. "We need to make sure the medical staff feels confident using it," Dr. Rahman said during one of their many strategy meetings. "We can't expect them to just accept it without seeing its value firsthand." Lucas agreed. "We need to provide additional training, not just for the tech side, but for the human side. These are people's lives we're talking about. If they don't trust MedAI, it won't succeed." Cameron, always the optimist, suggested, "We should bring the healthcare professionals into the process. Let them see how MedAI can help them, not replace them. We're here to augment their skills, not take them away. But even with these efforts, the skepticism didn't fade quickly. It was going to take time for people to understand that MedAI was a tool, not a replacement for human expertise. Meanwhile, the second challenge arose when a major bug was discovered. The AI's diagnostic suggestions, while generally accurate, began to show inconsistencies in certain medical specialties, particularly rare diseases. In several cases, MedAI had missed subtle signs of rare cancers or other less common conditions. It was an issue they hadn't anticipated, and the timing couldn't have been worse. Lucas stared at the bug report, feeling a rush of anxiety. How could they have missed this? This flaw was big, and if it were to go unnoticed for too long, lives could be at risk. He called an emergency meeting with Dr. Rahman and Cameron. "This is huge," Lucas said, running a hand through his hair. "We can't afford to have these kinds of mistakes slipping through. We need to fix this and fast." Dr. Rahman was already on the phone with the lead data scientists at MedAI's R&D division, preparing to dig into the system's algorithm. "This is why we need to keep testing, Lucas. It's not just about building a system and moving on. We need continuous iteration, constant learning." Cameron was pacing back and forth, brainstorming. "We could bring in specialists to help train the AI. Like, use real-world cases from doctors who are experts in these rare diseases. If we can feed it more diverse examples, we might be able to fix this." Lucas nodded. "That's a good idea, but we need to get the specialists on board first. They won't trust a machine that's made mistakes. We need them to see that we're dedicated to getting it right." The next few weeks were a blur. Lucas, Dr. Rahman, and Cameron worked relentlessly, reaching out to medical experts in various fields to review MedAI's findings and help improve its accuracy. They implemented a more robust validation system to prevent rare diseases from being overlooked and adjusted the system's learning algorithms to include a broader range of case studies. Despite the stress, Lucas began to feel a sense of determination. This wasn't just about creating the most advanced AI system. It was about ensuring it was reliable and could handle real-world complexities. MedAI had to prove itself not just as a tool, but as a trusted ally in the medical community. In the meantime, Elon Musk kept his eye on the progress, offering strategic advice and reassurance. He was the one who reminded Lucas that innovation wasn't a straight path. It was full of bumps, detours, and challenges that had to be navigated. One evening, after another round of testing, Lucas sat in the quiet of the lab, reviewing the results. MedAI's performance was improving, but the pressure was mounting. The media had been keeping close tabs on the system's deployment, and any mistake was amplified. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Elon. "Stay focused, Lucas. You're changing the world." Lucas smiled, despite the exhaustion that was beginning to weigh on him. "Changing the world," he muttered to himself. That's what he had set out to do, and he wasn't going to let a few setbacks stop him. He stood up, stretching, and glanced at the clock. It was late, too late perhaps, but Lucas couldn't stop now. They had come too far. The road ahead would be difficult, but the dream was still alive. With every bug fixed, with every breakthrough, MedAI was getting closer to its full potential, and Lucas was more determined than ever to see it through. The world was waiting, and MedAI's mission to change healthcare was only just beginning. It had been several months since MedAI's initial launch, and the landscape of healthcare was beginning to shift. As the system's capabilities continued to evolve, more hospitals, clinics, and medical institutions around the globe started adopting it. But despite the growing number of success stories, there were challenges that even Lucas couldn't anticipate, ones that tested the very heart of the project. Lucas sat at his desk in the newly expanded MedAI office in Palo Alto, staring at the news on his screen. One headline caught his eye: MedAI faces legal challenges amid growing adoption. The article detailed several lawsuits from medical malpractice firms who were questioning the legitimacy of AI-assisted diagnoses. They argued that in the case of an error, who was to blame, the doctor or the system? Lucas had anticipated some regulatory pushback, but the speed at which these legal battles were erupting was unnerving. He knew that in order for MedAI to succeed, it had to be accepted not only by doctors and patients, but also by legal institutions. "This isn't what we need right now," Lucas muttered under his breath. He turned to his team in the next room, who were working furiously on another software update. "We've got to get ahead of this. If we don't handle these legal issues properly, MedAI could be doomed before it even reaches its full potential. Cameron, who had been on the phone with various lawyers all morning, entered the office with a stack of papers. "We need to meet with some of the top healthcare law firms, Lucas. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but we need to find a way to position MedAI as a tool that enhances medical decision-making, not one that replaces it." Dr. Rahman, who had been reviewing the latest patient feedback, joined the conversation. The doctors using MedAI are already reporting improved diagnostic accuracy. But there's no denying that the legal system moves slower than technology. We need to push for legislation that better defines the role of AI in healthcare. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. The pressure was mounting. The legal landscape was only one part of the challenge. There were also issues with public perception. Though MedAI was hailed as a technological marvel, there were still many who distrusted the idea of machines diagnosing their health. How could they be sure that an algorithm understood them in the same way a human doctor did? "I've been thinking about this," Lucas said after a long pause. "We've got to humanize MedAI. We've always focused on its technological brilliance, but maybe it's time we focus on the people it's helping. We can't just talk about the data. We need to show the stories of the patients who've benefited from it." Dr. Rahman was quick to agree. "Exactly. People need to connect with the human side of what we're doing. We can partner with hospitals to tell the stories of patients whose lives were saved or drastically improved because of MedAI. That might help ease some of the concerns." The decision was made to shift gears, to show the world that MedAI wasn't just an AI. It was a partner in the fight against disease, a force that empowered healthcare workers to do their jobs better. Lucas began drafting a media campaign that would highlight real patient success stories, working closely with hospitals and clinics to gather testimonials and data that proved MedAI's worth. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, ever the visionary, was pushing the boundaries in his own way. He believed that the public needed a demonstration, a grand gesture, to show them that AI could be trusted. "Lucas," Elon called one afternoon, his voice crackling through the phone, "I've been thinking about the launch event for MedAI's expanded rollout. How about we do something radical? We'll invite a select group of patients, doctors, and media to a live demonstration where MedAI handles a real-time diagnosis of several complex cases. No edits, no filters, just raw, real-world examples." Lucas hesitated for a moment. The idea was bold, risky, even. But Elon's confidence was contagious. A live demonstration, with real patients and real outcomes, could either solidify MedAI's place in the healthcare system or deal it a devastating blow. "What do you think?" Elon pressed. "I think it could work," Lucas said slowly. "If we can show that MedAI can make the right calls, even under pressure, we might change the narrative around AI in medicine." The plan was set into motion. The team began reaching out to hospitals willing to participate in the live demonstration. Patients who had used MedAI for their diagnoses volunteered to share their stories. The goal was clear. They would showcase the power of MedAI in a way that had never been done before. In the weeks leading up to the event, tensions ran high. Lucas and his team worked tirelessly to prepare, ironing out any remaining bugs in the system and ensuring that everything was running smoothly. The pressure was immense. Not only did the system need to function flawlessly, but it needed to do so in front of a live audience. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The day of the demonstration arrived. Lucas, Dr. Rahman, Cameron, and a group of medical professionals stood in a sterile hospital room, cameras and reporters surrounding them. The tension in the air was palpable as the first patient, a woman in her mid-30s, was wheeled into the room. She had been struggling with unexplained symptoms for months, and her doctors were stumped. MedAI was connected to the hospital's diagnostic equipment, and the patient's medical history began to stream into the system. MedAI quickly processed the data, cross-referencing it with thousands of case studies. The AI's interface lit up as it produced a diagnosis, a rare autoimmune disorder that had been overlooked by multiple doctors. The room fell silent. The doctors and patients who had gathered watched in awe as the AI's recommendation matched the patient's condition. The diagnosis had been right. The crowd erupted in applause. But the demonstration wasn't over yet. MedAI would now handle a series of even more complex, life-threatening cases, real-time, no edits. Lucas stood on edge as the next case appeared on the screen. a 70-year-old man with a rare form of lung cancer. MedAI began analyzing his symptoms. It processed his scans, family history, and genetic data, suggesting a treatment plan. The doctors reviewed the recommendation, verifying it with their own expertise. It was, once again, spot on. As the final patient case was resolved, Lucas felt a mixture of relief and triumph. MedAI had done it. In front of a live audience, it had proven its worth, not as a replacement for doctors, but as a tool that worked alongside them to save lives. As the demonstration concluded, reporters rushed to Lucas and the team, eager for interviews. The media coverage that followed was overwhelmingly positive. The public perception of MedAI began to shift, and the legal challenges, while still ongoing, felt more manageable now. It was a win, but Lucas knew that the road ahead was still long. MedAI had earned its place in healthcare, but it had to prove itself, day in and day out, in hospitals and clinics around the world. And with every challenge, every hurdle, Lucas was more determined to see MedAI through to its ultimate success. For now, though, it was time to celebrate. The future of medicine had just begun. The success of the live demonstration was nothing short of a breakthrough. MedAI was finally being recognized as a revolutionary tool in healthcare, and the media buzz was palpable. However, as Lucas soon discovered, every victory in the world of technology came with its own set of complications. The legal firestorm that had been brewing behind the scenes was now in full force. It started with a letter. Lucas was sitting at his desk one afternoon, reading through emails from various investors and partners, when he noticed a thick envelope from a prestigious law firm. His stomach tightened as he tore it open, scanning the contents quickly. The letter was a formal notice of legal action against MedAI. The complaint was from several medical malpractice insurance companies who were suing the developers of MedAI for potential risks associated with the system's recommendations. They argued that MedAI's recommendations, even though tested rigorously, could still lead to incorrect diagnoses, which would put healthcare professionals at risk of being held liable. "Great," Lucas muttered, slumping back in his chair. He called Dr. Rahman and Cameron into his office immediately. "This is going to get messy," he said, passing them the letter. "They're targeting us now, saying that MedAI could make a doctor more likely to miss a diagnosis or follow the wrong treatment plan." Cameron scanned the letter, his brows furrowed. This was inevitable. People want someone to blame when something goes wrong, and we're an easy target right now. Dr. Rahman paced the room, deep in thought. "We need to make it clear that MedAI doesn't replace doctors, it assists them. The responsibility still lies with the healthcare professionals. But we need to be proactive about this, not just reactive." Lucas nodded. "We'll need a legal team that's well-versed in healthcare regulations. We're not just fighting a lawsuit. We're fighting for the future of AI in medicine." In the coming days, the team assembled an all-star legal counsel to navigate the storm. But the process wasn't going to be easy. Lucas had hoped the legal battles would stay in the background while they focused on perfecting MedAI, but now it was a full-blown crisis. The first court date loomed. The lawsuit was gaining traction in the media, with critics arguing that no matter how advanced MedAI was, it would never be able to replicate the intuition and judgment of a seasoned doctor. Some doctors were even speaking out publicly, expressing concerns about being blamed for errors that could be traced back to MedAI's recommendations. Lucas was starting to feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had poured everything into MedAI, but now it seemed like all their progress could be undone by a legal technicality. Despite the mounting pressure, Elon Musk, as always, was an unexpected source of reassurance. He called Lucas one night, offering his trademark optimism. "Lucas, don't worry about this," Elon said. "People are afraid of change, especially when it challenges their entire way of working. But MedAI is going to change the healthcare industry for the better. These legal issues will pass. We just need to keep pushing forward." His words brought Lucas a sense of calm. Elon had always been one to take risks, and he had a knack for making others believe that everything would work out, even when the odds were against them. In the meantime, Lucas decided to take a more hands-on approach. He flew to several cities where hospitals were using MedAI, meeting with doctors and patients to hear their experiences. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. The stories from the medical professionals who had used MedAI were powerful. It had helped them save time, identify diseases earlier, and ultimately offer better care to their patients. The real turning point came when Lucas attended a conference with a panel of legal experts on healthcare technology. Sitting in front of a packed room, he was invited to speak about MedAI and its role in the future of medicine. The audience was skeptical, but Lucas had a plan. He spoke confidently about the challenges MedAI had faced, the improvements they had made, and how the system was designed to work alongside doctors, not replace them. He highlighted the stories of patients whose lives had been saved due to MedAI's early detection capabilities. As we move forward into a future where AI plays a critical role in healthcare, we must remember that technology is a tool, Lucas said passionately. A tool that can help doctors make better decisions, not one that takes away their autonomy. We are not replacing healthcare professionals. We are empowering them. His speech was met with applause, but Lucas knew that convincing a room full of legal experts was just the beginning. He had to ensure that MedAI's role in healthcare was solidified through legislation, court cases, and widespread adoption. After the panel, a legal expert approached him. "I was impressed with your speech," the man said, "but you're going to need more than just good intentions. The law is behind the times. AI in medicine is still a gray area, and there are no clear regulations. It's not just about liability. It's about defining the role of AI in healthcare." Lucas knew the man was right. The legal system had yet to catch up with the rapidly advancing technology. It was clear that MedAI's fight wasn't just in the courtroom. It was in the legislative halls as well. Back at the office, Lucas gathered his team. "We need to take action on multiple fronts," he said. "First, we need to ensure that we have ironclad agreements with the hospitals and doctors who are using MedAI. We need to clarify that responsibility still rests with the healthcare providers. Second, we need to work with lawmakers to create a framework for AI in medicine that protects everyone, doctors, patients, and technology developers." Cameron leaned forward, his eyes filled with determination. "And we'll need to keep getting MedAI into more hospitals and clinics. The more widespread its use, the harder it will be for people to ignore it. The public needs to see it as a positive force." Dr. Rahman nodded. "The world is watching us now. We have to prove that MedAI is here to stay, not just a passing trend." Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the responsibility pressing down on him once again. The road ahead was more uncertain than ever, but one thing was clear. MedAI's mission to revolutionize healthcare wasn't over yet. In fact, it was just beginning. As he left the office that night, Lucas couldn't shake the thought that the biggest challenges were yet to come. But no matter what lay ahead, he knew that MedAI had the potential to change the world. And he wasn't about to back down now. The battle in the courtroom was intensifying. MedAI had become the focal point of a larger debate about the future of artificial intelligence in healthcare, and every new development seemed to fuel the fire. Lucas had been relentlessly fighting to keep the company's vision intact while handling the mounting legal and public pressure. Yet, despite all the challenges, there was a glimmer of hope on the horizon. It was a late evening in the office when Lucas received an unexpected call. The number was from a private number, unfamiliar to him. He hesitated for a moment, but decided to answer. "Lucas, it's Elon," came the voice on the other end, calm and reassuring as always. "Hey, Elon, how's it going?" Lucas asked, trying to mask the exhaustion in his voice. "I've been watching the media, and I see what's happening with MedAI. The lawsuits are stacking up, but I've been thinking. I want to get involved in a more direct way," Elon said. "We need to start shifting the conversation around AI. We need a moment, a public demonstration that shows MedAI is an essential tool in the healthcare industry, not a threat." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" Elon's voice was filled with excitement. "I want to host an event, a live-streamed session where we show MedAI solving some of the toughest, most complex cases. We'll invite top medical experts, regulatory bodies, and media from all over the world. The goal is to shift the narrative, show people the real value of MedAI, and demonstrate its partnership with healthcare professionals." Lucas sat in stunned silence for a moment. A public demonstration on this scale could be the break they needed, but it also carried immense risks. If anything went wrong, it could be disastrous. "You're thinking big," Lucas said finally, "but I'm with you. If we can pull this off, it could change everything. We'd need to make sure every angle is covered, Medical experts, real patient stories, a flawless execution. Elon chuckled. Of course, we'll get it right. But this has to be more than just a demonstration. It's about changing the way people think about AI, not just in medicine but everywhere. This is a chance to define MedAI's future. Lucas agreed. The event could be the turning point they desperately needed. But the stakes were high, and time was running out. He immediately called his team together to discuss the logistics. We have to do this, but we can't afford any mistakes, Lucas said as he addressed Dr. Rahman, Cameron, and the rest of the team. Elon has a plan, and we're going to make it happen. The world is watching, and we need to prove that MedAI can be trusted. Dr. Rahman's face lit up with determination. We've been working on this for years. It's time to take the leap and show everyone what MedAI can really do. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. Lucas, Elon, and the entire MedAI team worked around the clock to plan the event, coordinating with hospitals, doctors, and media outlets. The event would feature real-time case studies, where MedAI would assist doctors in diagnosing patients with complex medical conditions. They would use a live stream to show the world how MedAI could make critical decisions in real time, partnering with doctors to enhance their diagnostic capabilities. But there were concerns. The medical community was still divided on the use of AI in healthcare. Some doctors were vocal in their skepticism, and critics continued to argue that machines should never replace the human touch in medicine. The legal battles were still looming, and any mistakes during the event could lead to even more lawsuits. As the event date drew closer, Lucas found himself questioning whether they were truly ready. They had done everything they could to ensure the technology was sound, but the fear of failure lingered. Would the live demonstration be enough to convince the world of MedAI's value? Or would it become another cautionary tale of overhyped technology? The day of the demonstration arrived. The team gathered in a high-tech facility designed specifically for the event, which would be broadcast to millions around the world. The room was filled with media representatives, medical professionals, and experts from all over the globe. The anticipation was palpable. Lucas stood backstage, watching as the countdown timer ticked down. His heart raced as he adjusted his suit and reviewed the final details in his mind. This was it, the moment they had all been working toward. Elon, standing beside him, gave him an encouraging nod. "You've got this, Lucas. This is the moment you've been waiting for." Lucas smiled weakly. Let's hope it's the moment the world has been waiting for. As the event began, Lucas stepped onto the stage with Dr. Rahman and Cameron by his side. The audience erupted into applause as the spotlight shone on them. Lucas began by introducing MedAI, explaining its purpose and how it had already saved countless lives. The goal of MedAI, Lucas said, has always been simple: to assist healthcare professionals in making better, more informed decisions. We believe in the power of human expertise combined with the precision of artificial intelligence. Today, we'll show you how MedAI works in real time. The first patient case was presented. A middle-aged man with a complex heart condition who had been referred to a clinic using MedAI's diagnostic system. The doctors at the clinic had already run tests, but they were uncertain about the next steps. MedAI immediately began analyzing the patient's data, scanning medical records and diagnostic images, and suggesting a treatment plan that integrated the latest research and cutting-edge medical protocols. The doctors at the clinic reviewed MedAI's recommendation, running their own diagnostics alongside it. The result: MedAI had nailed the diagnosis, confirming what the doctors had suspected. The audience was stunned into silence, watching as the doctors and MedAI collaborated seamlessly. The room erupted into applause once again. Over the course of the next hour, more patient cases were presented, each more complex than the last. MedAI handled them with precision, aiding the doctors in making decisions quickly and confidently. It was clear, MedAI was not just a tool, it was an indispensable ally in the fight against disease. As the event came to a close, Lucas felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had done it. MedAI had proven its worth, not as a replacement for doctors, but as a tool that amplified their abilities. The live demonstration had shown the world that artificial intelligence could coexist with human expertise to create a better healthcare system. The media coverage that followed was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. The legal challenges were still ongoing, But the demonstration had shifted the public conversation. MedAI was no longer just a buzzword. It was a proven, transformative force in healthcare. Lucas stood backstage, breathing a sigh of relief. Elon, with his usual confidence, clapped him on the back. "I told you it would work." Lucas smiled, but there was a new weight on his shoulders. The fight for MedAI's future was far from over. But at that moment, he knew one thing for sure. They had crossed the point of no return, and there was no going back. The aftermath of the live demonstration was a whirlwind of media coverage, social media buzz, and public discussions. MedAI had successfully captured the world's attention, but Lucas knew the battle was far from over. Legal challenges still loomed large, and now they had a whole new set of obstacles to navigate. The media frenzy was both a blessing and a curse. While the demonstration had successfully showcased MedAI's potential, it had also intensified scrutiny from regulators, competitors, and healthcare professionals who were hesitant to embrace artificial intelligence. As predicted, many of the largest insurance companies doubled down on their lawsuits, now claiming that MedAI's demonstration, while impressive, did not absolve the technology from the very real risks it posed. Lucas was no longer just dealing with internal challenges and technical development. He was fighting for the very future of AI in healthcare. It was a chilly morning when Lucas met with his legal team to strategize their next steps. Sitting around a large conference table, the group discussed the legal threats that now hung over MedAI. The suits weren't just about liability. They were about defining AI's role in a system that had been fundamentally human for centuries. "We need to keep pushing the narrative that MedAI is not replacing doctors," said Grace, their lead attorney, as she pointed to a set of slides on the screen. "It's a tool that enhances their ability to make informed decisions, not something that can be held liable for an individual's decision." "I agree," Lucas said, rubbing his eyes tiredly. "But we also need to be more aggressive. These lawsuits aren't just about money. They're about public perception. If we can't convince the world that MedAI is a positive force in medicine, we might lose everything." Cameron, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "We need a counteroffensive. We've shown the technology works, but now we need to prove that it's irreplaceable. We need to get more hospitals and doctors on board, people who can vouch for MedAI's value from a clinical perspective." "I've been thinking the same thing," Lucas said, standing up and pacing. "We need more testimonials from the front lines. Real-world evidence that doctors and patients are seeing the difference." Dr. Rahman, who had been sitting silently in the corner, leaned forward. "I can reach out to some of the leading hospitals we've partnered with. We could set up a series of interviews with doctors who've used MedAI in critical situations. If we show that MedAI is saving lives, it won't just be an argument, it'll be a movement." Lucas nodded in agreement. "That's the kind of proof we need. We're not just defending a product here. We're defending the future of healthcare itself." The team sprang into action. In the days that followed, they reached out to hospitals, doctors, and medical professionals who had used MedAI, setting up interviews and gathering testimonials. The doctors were eager to share their experiences, knowing that MedAI had enhanced their ability to diagnose patients more quickly and accurately. But there was a deeper issue Lucas had to contend with. The fear surrounding AI in healthcare wasn't just about the technology. It was about the potential shift in the entire medical ecosystem. Doctors worried about their jobs, insurance companies feared an increased risk of claims, and patients were uncertain about trusting an algorithm with their health. These were not challenges that could be solved with data alone. They required a cultural shift. Lucas was relentless. Every day, he met with healthcare professionals, public relations teams, and legal experts, working to dismantle the growing resistance. But there was one thing that weighed heavily on his mind: the court cases. The moment they had all been dreading was fast approaching. The first of the major lawsuits was set to go to trial in a matter of weeks, and Lucas had no illusions about the uphill battle they faced. He had seen the power of the opposition: insurance companies with deep pockets and legal teams capable of tying the case up in court for years. One evening, as Lucas sat at his desk late into the night, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Elon Musk. "Big week ahead, huh?" Elon's message read, "How are you holding up?" Lucas smiled despite the stress that had been building inside him. Elon had been an unexpected source of support throughout this journey. Always pragmatic, but never short of encouragement. It's going to be tough, Lucas replied. The court cases are looming, and the pressure's building. But we're pushing forward. We've got the doctors on our side, and the tech is solid. Elon responded almost immediately. Keep pushing. There's no way back now. You've got a huge opportunity to change the world, and the world is watching. Show them what MedAI can do. His words were simple but profound. Elon wasn't just offering advice. He was reminding Lucas why they were doing this in the first place. MedAI wasn't just about the technology. It was about changing the way the world thought about healthcare. Lucas needed that reminder. He needed to remember the mission, the potential of MedAI to reshape the future of medicine, and how close they were to making it a reality. The next morning, as he sat in the courtroom for the first trial, Lucas was surprisingly calm. He had been preparing for this day for months, and despite the fear and uncertainty, he felt a sense of purpose. The courtroom was packed with reporters, legal experts, and spectators. On the opposing side, a powerful legal team representing several major insurance companies was ready to tear apart MedAI's legitimacy. They were focusing on one point: whether or not MedAI could be held accountable for mistakes that might occur when a doctor relied on its recommendations. Lucas sat beside his legal team, reviewing the arguments in his head. They had a strong case. They had evidence from doctors, testimonials from patients, and a powerful legal defense arguing that MedAI was an assistant, not a replacement for human judgment. Still, there was a nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach. If they lost this case, it could set a dangerous precedent for AI in healthcare. The trial began, and the tension in the air was palpable. One by one, witnesses took the stand: doctors who had used MedAI, patients whose lives had been improved by the technology. As the testimonies unfolded, the opposition attempted to discredit them, but Lucas remained focused, knowing this was just the beginning of a long battle. By the end of the first day of testimony, Lucas knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a fight for MedAI's future. It was a fight for the future of healthcare itself. The technology had proven itself, and now it was time for the world to see it for what it truly was: a tool to save lives, not a threat to the medical profession. And so, the battle intensified. Lucas knew that in the days ahead, there would be more courtrooms, more challenges, and more public scrutiny. But he had made it this far, and he wasn't about to stop now. The next few weeks were a blur of legal battles, media campaigns, and public pressure. Lucas had become accustomed to the constant hum of stress surrounding him, but the weight of the situation was taking its toll. With each passing day, the courtroom drama intensified, and MedAI's future hung in the balance. The stakes were higher than ever. The insurance companies were relentless, bringing forward more expert witnesses, each attempting to dismantle the validity of MedAI's contributions to the medical field. They argued that no machine could replicate the human intuition and emotional intelligence of a doctor, pointing to minor errors in the technology's early years as proof that AI was too risky to trust with human lives. Despite the mounting pressure, Lucas held on to his optimism, clinging to the victories they had achieved in their demonstrations. The public's perception had been shifting, with more doctors and healthcare professionals openly praising the technology, but the courtroom remained a battlefront he could not afford to lose. It was during a particularly grueling week in court when Lucas received a call that would alter the course of everything. The voice on the other end of the line was calm, but its message was anything but. "Lucas, it's Grace," said the lead attorney, her tone clipped. "I've just received some information. It's not good." "What is it?" Lucas asked, his heart racing as he braced for the worst. "It's a letter from the FDA," Grace continued. "They've issued a formal warning to MedAI. They're questioning the accuracy of our clinical trials and stating that we haven't fully met regulatory standards for a technology like ours. If they decide to enforce this, it could set back everything we've worked for by years." Lucas felt a wave of panic surge through him. The FDA's approval was one of the most critical aspects of MedAI's legitimacy. If they lost it, not only would the company face severe financial penalties, but the public's faith in the technology would likely plummet. "Can we fight it?" Lucas asked, trying to steady his breath. Grace paused for a moment. "We'll fight it, but this will delay everything. And the pressure is mounting, Lucas. If we don't have FDA clearance, we lose the ability to partner with hospitals and doctors on a large scale. The lawsuits will become more aggressive, and the media will turn on us. He couldn't let that happen, not after everything they had built. MedAI wasn't just a company to Lucas, it was a revolution in the making. But now, it seemed that every obstacle he faced was an insurmountable mountain. As if on cue, another message arrived. This time, it was from Elon. The subject line read simply, "We need to talk." Lucas felt a sense of relief wash over him. If anyone could offer a solution to this mess, it was Elon. He quickly dialed the number. "Elon," Lucas began, his voice tinged with desperation, "we've got a serious problem. The FDA is questioning our trials, and they're threatening to block us. This could be a huge setback, and I don't know what to do." Elon's voice was steady, unwavering. "I've been keeping an eye on this. We knew this was coming. The FDA is always going to be a challenge when it comes to new technologies. But we've got an opportunity here to change the narrative." Lucas leaned forward, intrigued but cautious. "What do you mean?" "We're going to get in front of this," Elon replied. "You need to show the FDA and the world that MedAI is not just compliant, it's necessary. I'll have some of my top engineers and scientists look over the data. We'll create a new set of independent trials, ones that go above and beyond what's required. We'll work with the FDA directly to ensure MedAI is meeting every regulatory standard. But more importantly, we need to prove that MedAI can save lives, and it's worth the risk of any initial mistakes." Lucas's mind raced. Elon's plan wasn't just about appeasing regulators. It was about taking control of the situation and turning it into an advantage. They could use this moment to reaffirm MedAI's potential and further demonstrate its indispensable role in modern healthcare. "All right," Lucas said, his voice filled with newfound determination. "Let's do it. But we'll need to act fast. Time is against us." Over the next few weeks, Lucas worked closely with Elon's team to create a new round of trials that were more comprehensive than anything MedAI had ever undergone before. They brought in independent third-party researchers, regulatory experts, and healthcare professionals to ensure that the data would be impeccable. But even as the trials proceeded, the pressure continued to mount. The court cases were still in full swing, and the media frenzy wasn't letting up. Every day, Lucas felt like he was walking a tightrope. One wrong move, one mistake, and everything could come crashing down. Despite the uncertainty, Lucas kept his focus on the end goal. MedAI's success depended not just on surviving these trials, but on proving that AI could work in harmony with the medical community. It was during this critical period that Lucas received a message from Dr. Rahman. "I've been speaking with the doctors at the hospital in Denver," she wrote. "They've had a breakthrough using MedAI in real-time surgery. It's something we've never seen before. They want to showcase it at the next medical conference. It could be a game-changer for our public image." Lucas read the message twice. A real-time surgical breakthrough? This could be the defining moment they needed to solidify MedAI's reputation. It wasn't just about diagnostic accuracy anymore. This was about MedAI enhancing the very way surgeries were performed. He immediately called Dr. Rahman. "We need to make this happen. Get the team, get the doctors, and make sure we have the footage ready. This is the kind of breakthrough that could change the entire conversation." As the day of the conference approached, Lucas felt a mixture of excitement and fear. They had everything to gain, but also everything to lose. The world was watching, and MedAI's next move would either solidify its place as a revolutionary tool or prove the critics right. The conference day arrived. Lucas and the MedAI team stood at the back of the auditorium as Dr. Rahman took the stage. The screen behind her lit up with images of a real-time surgery, showing how MedAI worked in tandem with the surgical team to guide them through the procedure. The precision and accuracy of the technology were undeniable. The audience was transfixed. The feedback was instantaneous. For the first time in weeks, Lucas allowed himself to breathe. This was the moment MedAI had been waiting for. The conference footage quickly went viral, and the world began to see MedAI not as a liability, but as an essential partner in healthcare. The combination of cutting-edge technology and human expertise was proving to be a winning formula. But the true turning point had come. The FDA, seeing the overwhelming evidence of MedAI's success, agreed to reassess its position. And, after weeks of review, they made their announcement. MedAI had passed their new set of trials, meeting every regulatory requirement. The FDA gave their official approval. It wasn't just a victory for Lucas. It was a victory for the future of healthcare. MedAI had proven that AI wasn't a threat. It was the future of medicine. But as Lucas looked at the approval letter, he knew the real work was just beginning. The battle for MedAI's future had only just reached its first victory, and there were still many more hurdles to overcome. But for the first time in months, Lucas felt a surge of hope. They had made it to the tipping point, and there was no turning back. The dust had barely settled from the FDA approval when Lucas found himself standing on the edge of a new chapter for MedAI. With the regulatory hurdles behind them, they were now free to move forward, but the world had changed. The landscape of healthcare was shifting beneath his feet, and the pressure was mounting to prove that MedAI wasn't just a novelty, it was a necessity. Elon had been right. The new trials, the conference breakthroughs, and the tireless work they'd put in had created an undeniable momentum. But Lucas knew that momentum could only carry them so far. Now, they needed to scale, and scaling meant tackling challenges bigger than just technology or court cases. They needed to convince an entire industry, and ultimately the public, that this was the future. It was a sunny afternoon when Lucas and Dr. Rahman met at a bustling cafe near their headquarters. They had just received news that MedAI had been granted its first official hospital partnership in a major metropolitan area. The announcement had been heralded as a breakthrough moment, but Lucas knew this was only the beginning. The real question was, could they replicate this success on a larger scale? "We've got one hospital," Lucas said, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "That's a huge step, but it's just one. We need dozens, hundreds, thousands of hospitals on board. And more importantly, we need to convince doctors to trust MedAI every single day." Dr. Rahman nodded. "This isn't just about showing the technology works. It's about creating a cultural shift. For years, doctors have been trained to be skeptical of anything that challenges their authority. The idea that an AI can enhance their decision-making? That's a tough pill to swallow for some." Lucas ran a hand through his hair. "I know. And what about the patients? They're going to have questions. They're going to ask, how can we trust this thing?" "Trust comes with proof," Dr. Rahman said thoughtfully. "The more doctors and patients see MedAI working in real-world situations, the more they'll trust it. But we also need to remember that MedAI isn't just a tool. It's a partner. It's a team member in every aspect of healthcare." Lucas leaned back, staring out the window as the cafe bustled around him. The answer seemed simple in theory. They had to prove MedAI's worth through more trials, more demonstrations, and more partnerships. But the reality was far more complex. They were in a race against time, with competitors nipping at their heels, lawsuits still ongoing, and a public that remained divided. "Let's start by building out a series of case studies," Lucas said, his voice firm with determination. "Real stories of doctors and patients whose lives have been saved or improved by MedAI. Let's get those out into the world." Dr. Rahman smiled. "I can help with that. I know a few hospitals where the team has already seen drastic improvements in their outcomes. Let's start there." As Lucas left the cafe, his phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Elon. "You're on the right track," the message read. "I've been talking to some people in the space, and we're going to start working on a large-scale initiative to introduce MedAI to the broader medical community. It's time to get serious about global expansion." Lucas read the message twice. This was it. Global expansion wasn't just a possibility anymore. It was the future. But first, they had to deal with the looming challenge of public opinion. Despite all the progress they'd made, there were still pockets of resistance, particularly among those who saw MedAI as a potential threat to jobs. The idea that AI could complement doctors was still a hard sell for some in the medical community, and Lucas knew they needed to address these concerns head-on. The next step was to call a meeting with the core MedAI team. The goal, to craft a comprehensive strategy for global expansion, but also to ensure that they were all aligned on the mission. They couldn't afford any missteps. At the meeting, Lucas opened the floor. "We've just hit a huge milestone, but it's clear that the hard work is just beginning. We need to create a plan to introduce MedAI to hospitals on a larger scale. We need to get more doctors on board, more institutions, more governments. And we need to have a clear narrative for the public about how MedAI fits into the future of healthcare." Cameron spoke first. I think the most important thing is addressing the fear around job displacement. If we don't tackle that head-on, we risk alienating the very people who should be our biggest advocates. Grace added, I agree. The lawsuits are still ongoing, and we need to make sure that MedAI is framed as a supportive tool, not a replacement. But there's also the issue of transparency. We need to be open about how it works, how data is handled, and what safeguards are in place. Dr. Rahman added, we need more collaboration with medical professionals. The more doctors and patients we can involve in the process, the more credibility MedAI will have. We need to show them that AI can augment their abilities, not take over their jobs. Lucas nodded. Exactly. Our narrative needs to focus on MedAI's ability to empower doctors, not replace them. We need to highlight real-world success stories and use those to build trust. Cameron suggested, we should also be thinking about partnerships with global organizations. Hospitals in Europe, Asia, and South America are also looking to innovate. If we can get MedAI into those markets, it could open doors we haven't even considered. The team worked late into the night, drafting plans for a global outreach initiative, designing marketing campaigns, and building partnerships with hospitals, research institutions, and governments. They knew that scaling MedAI was more than just about technology. It was about changing hearts and minds. But even as the plans began to take shape, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to face a whole new set of challenges. The competition was fierce, and MedAI's success had made them a target. As Lucas walked out of the office that night, the street seemed quieter than usual. He had the weight of the world on his shoulders, but for the first time in a while, he felt a sense of calm. The future was no longer a distant dream. It was here, now, within reach, and MedAI was ready to change the world. But the journey was far from over, and Lucas knew that the road ahead would be paved with more obstacles, more challenges, and more risks. But he was no longer afraid. The stakes were too high, and the mission was too important. The future of healthcare was just beginning. The momentum MedAI had gained was undeniable. The FDA approval had opened doors, and the breakthrough with real-time surgeries had captured global attention. But as Lucas soon discovered, success was often followed by fierce competition. In the weeks following the global expansion discussions, MedAI was thrust into a new battle, not just for market share, but for credibility and survival in a fast-evolving healthcare tech landscape. Rivals in the industry, many with deep pockets and years of experience, were quick to react. Some companies, with similar AI-based medical technology, had been quietly watching MedAI's progress, waiting for the right moment to strike. Others were even more brazen, attempting to discredit MedAI through public campaigns and underhanded tactics. Lucas sat in his office one morning, staring at a new report. A competitor, MedSolve, a company with a large network of hospital partners, had just launched a major marketing campaign, claiming their AI system was safer and more reliable than MedAI. The company's CEO, a well-known figure in the medical tech field, was making bold statements about MedSolve's AI being the only system fully approved by leading medical institutions. Lucas clenched his jaw. He knew that MedSolve's claim was misleading. MedAI had passed FDA approval and had made significant strides in real-world testing. But in the world of healthcare, perception was just as important as reality. The media quickly picked up the story, running headlines like, MedSolve's AI leaves MedAI in the dust, and are we trusting the right AI in medicine? It wasn't long before the social media firestorm began. Lucas's phone buzzed with messages from Grace and Cameron. Grace's text read, we need a statement. The narrative is shifting against us. We can't let this stand. Cameron followed up, we need to get in front of this. We're playing defense right now, and we need to play offense. Let's show the world why MedAI is the better choice. Lucas leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. The media and public opinion could make or break MedAI. He had to act fast, and he had to be strategic. This wasn't just a marketing battle. It was a battle for trust. He called an emergency meeting with the core team. We need to respond, but not just with a simple press release, Lucas said, pacing back and forth. We need to tell the world why MedAI isn't just a competitor in this space, but why we're the future of healthcare. We've got real-world applications, real patient success stories. It's time to turn the narrative in our favor. Dr. Rahman was the first to speak up. We need to make sure we're focusing on the right things. Safety is the primary concern for both doctors and patients. We've already demonstrated the accuracy of MedAI, but now we need to show its ability to learn from real-time experience. We should highlight the breakthroughs happening in our partner hospitals, not just in terms of technology, but patient outcomes. Cameron nodded. And we need to be transparent about what we're doing to ensure safety. If we can show how MedAI has passed rigorous testing and peer reviews, it'll set us apart from competitors who are just throwing their tech into the market. Lucas tapped his fingers on the desk. All right, we'll get a press statement out first, but we also need to launch a video campaign. Something with real doctors talking about how MedAI has already changed the way they approach patient care. People need to see this tech in action, not just hear about it from us. Grace, who had been quiet up until this point, spoke up. We also need to address the financial argument. MedSolv is positioning themselves as a more affordable option, and while I don't think we should engage in a price war, we need to highlight how the return on investment for MedAI, especially with the efficiency it brings to hospitals and clinics, actually saves money in the long run. Lucas nodded. Good point. Let's also get our legal team on this. I want to make sure we're calling out any misleading claims, but we'll do it professionally. We have to stay above the fray. As the team scrambled to organize their response, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that MedSolv wasn't just playing for market share. They were playing to take MedAI down. The sudden surge of competitive attacks felt orchestrated, and Lucas knew they couldn't afford to underestimate the strategy behind it. Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly. The press release was carefully crafted, emphasizing MedAI's successes in the field, particularly its real-world impact on patient care. They showcased the stories of doctors who had used the system to diagnose patients more accurately and of hospitals that had seen significant improvements in patient outcomes thanks to MedAI's guidance. The video campaign went live, featuring real-time footage from surgeries where MedAI had assisted in decision-making, all backed by glowing testimonials from renowned doctors. Lucas also appeared in interviews with medical journals and tech outlets, consistently emphasizing the science behind MedAI, as well as its commitment to transparency and safety. He calmly addressed the claims from MedSolv, highlighting the flaws in their marketing and presenting MedAI as the more sophisticated and reliable choice. But just when it seemed like they were regaining control, another challenge emerged. A whistleblower from one of MedSolv's partner hospitals had come forward, claiming that their AI system had caused several misdiagnoses during high-pressure situations. The media jumped on this story, contrasting MedAI's track record of safety with MedSolv's alleged errors. It was a moment of irony. MedSolv had been throwing stones, and now their own glass house was cracking. Lucas knew the situation was precarious. While the whistleblower's claims needed to be handled with care, it presented an opportunity to shift the conversation in MedAI's favor. He called a meeting with the team to discuss their next steps. "We can't let this become our story," Lucas said, looking at his team. "We need to stay focused on our own strengths. The real question now is, how do we ensure this moment doesn't backfire on us?" Grace spoke up. "We need to be careful how we respond. We don't want to appear as though we're taking advantage of someone else's misfortune, but we can use this as an opportunity to reinforce the safety and efficacy of MedAI. We need to make it clear that our technology is constantly evolving, and any minor missteps are addressed and corrected before they become a problem." Dr. Rahman nodded. "We can also highlight how MedAI is built on constant learning and improvement. The system doesn't just stop after deployment. It evolves based on new data, ensuring it gets better with every use." Lucas smiled. "Exactly. Let's get out in front of this, but we'll do it the right way. We'll focus on our track record and the constant improvements we're making." As the competition heated up, Lucas found himself once again facing an existential question. Was MedAI's place in the healthcare world secure, or was this just the beginning of a long, hard battle? One thing was certain: he couldn't afford to slow down. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but if MedAI was to change the world of healthcare, Lucas knew they had to keep pushing forward. There was no turning back now. The storm of competition had finally reached a crescendo. MedAI's battle for trust was no longer just about outperforming rivals. It was about surviving the onslaught of public skepticism and media backlash. Yet, amid the chaos, a clear opportunity had emerged. The recent whistleblower incident with MedSolve had shifted the public's attention to the risks of AI in healthcare. MedAI now had a chance to seize the narrative and present itself as the safe, reliable alternative. But Lucas knew that this was no longer just about pushing out a message. It was about solidifying MedAI's position in a world that was rapidly changing its view on artificial intelligence. Lucas sat in his office one evening, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop, which was filled with data from their recent campaigns. Despite all the aggressive countermarketing, MedAI's numbers were slowly creeping up. Hospitals were starting to listen, doctors were beginning to embrace the tech, and public opinion was shifting ever so slightly in their favor. But Lucas also knew that this was the calm before the storm. MedSolve wasn't going to back down, and if anything, their tactics were about to get even more aggressive. It was then that he got a message from Elon. "I'm in," the message read. "I've been talking to some of the biggest players in the field, and we're ready to back MedAI. If you want to go global, we can make it happen." Lucas's heart raced. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. With Elon Musk's backing, MedAI could finally take the next leap, expand its reach to global markets, and gain the credibility it needed to dominate the healthcare landscape. But the weight of that decision was heavy. This wasn't just about scaling the company. It was about taking on the massive responsibility of transforming the world's healthcare systems. He immediately called a meeting with the core team. "I just got off the phone with Elon," Lucas announced, his voice a mix of excitement and caution. "He's all in. He believes in MedAI, and he's ready to back us. But that means we need to make a move now. If we go global, we can't afford to fail. We need to make sure MedAI is not just a tool in a hospital, but an essential part of every healthcare system." Grace's eyes lit up. "That's incredible news. We've been working so hard to get to this point, but we need to be strategic. Going global means dealing with different regulations, different markets, and different expectations. It's not going to be easy." "Agreed," Lucas said, "but I think we're ready. We've already established ourselves as a leader in the US. Now, it's time to prove we can do it on a global scale. We need to start by identifying which countries and regions would be most receptive to our technology." Cameron nodded. "Let's start by looking at the countries where AI adoption in healthcare is already happening. Europe, parts of Asia, and even some markets in Africa are primed for this kind of innovation. We should also consider partnering with international health organizations to create a unified approach." Dr. Rahman added, "And let's not forget the cultural aspect. Some regions are more open to AI in healthcare than others. We need to tailor our approach to each market. We'll need local advocates to push MedAI's benefits in a way that resonates with the healthcare professionals and patients there." Lucas turned to them, energized by the team's enthusiasm. "All right, let's do this. We need to move fast, but carefully. First, we identify the right partners and regions. Second, we work on localizing our campaigns and messaging. And third, we make sure MedAI's infrastructure is ready to scale. This will be a massive undertaking." As the team dove into action, Lucas couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision. Expanding globally wasn't just about spreading MedAI's technology. It was about proving that AI could truly enhance healthcare systems worldwide. This was the moment where MedAI could either become a revolution or fall victim to its own hype. In the following weeks, the pace only quickened. Meetings with international healthcare leaders, regulatory bodies, and tech giants became a daily routine. Lucas's team worked around the clock, preparing to launch in Europe, with Elon's team facilitating connections with government officials in key regions. But amidst the excitement, Lucas began to notice subtle cracks in the armor. His inbox was flooded with emails from hospital administrators who were hesitant to implement MedAI on a larger scale. They had seen the media reports about AI failures, the lawsuits, and the growing skepticism surrounding new technology. Despite all the evidence that MedAI was a safe and effective tool, these doubts were hard to shake. And then, the unthinkable happened. A rival company, Alpha Health, which had been quietly developing its own AI system for the past few years, made a major announcement. They had partnered with a global health organization to launch a worldwide initiative to integrate their AI system into clinics and hospitals across the world. The announcement came with a well-timed press release and high-profile endorsements from several respected medical institutions. The media buzz was immediate, and Alpha Health's stock price soared. Lucas watched the headlines roll in. Alpha Health steps ahead with global AI healthcare initiative, the news outlets proclaimed. It was a direct blow to MedAI's expansion efforts. The competition had just gotten much more intense. "We're not going to let this deter us," Lucas said, trying to remain calm despite the storm brewing around them. "We've faced competition before, and we'll face it again. But we're different. We have the real-world results, the technology that's already proven to work in hospitals. We have the stories of lives saved. We can't let this distraction slow us down." But deep down, Lucas knew this new challenge would test MedAI like never before. They weren't just up against a company that had entered the market. They were up against a global powerhouse with the resources, connections, and credibility to shift the landscape. The race for dominance in AI healthcare was no longer a sprint, it was a marathon. Lucas glanced at his team, each of them deep in thought. He could see the determination in their eyes, but he also knew the weight of the decision now resting on their shoulders. This was the tipping point. MedAI had fought its way to the top, but now the real test had arrived. Could they outsmart, outlast, and outplay the competition? Could they win the global healthcare revolution they had set out to create? Only time would tell. The weeks following Alpha Health's announcement had thrown MedAI into turmoil. What had once been a clear path toward global dominance was now a competitive battlefield. Alpha Health's new initiative had made a bold statement, and with its worldwide partnerships and media blitz, it was hard to ignore. But Lucas and his team were determined not to let this setback define them. They had come too far. Elon's backing had provided MedAI with an opportunity to level the playing field. However, Lucas knew that they had to move faster and more strategically than ever before. If they were to take on a company as powerful as Alpha Health, they needed to be nimble, focused, and deeply connected to the healthcare systems they were trying to transform. The first order of business was to build partnerships with global health organizations. Lucas and Grace worked relentlessly, leveraging Elon's influence to secure meetings with high-level representatives from health institutions across Europe, Asia, and Latin America. They were looking for countries that had already embraced digital transformation in healthcare and where AI was seen as an opportunity to address major medical challenges. After weeks of negotiation, MedAI had secured its first international partnership in Europe with a large hospital network in Germany. The deal was a game-changer. Not only would it bring MedAI's technology to one of the most prestigious medical systems in the world, but it also sent a clear message to competitors that MedAI was not backing down. Lucas and Grace flew to Berlin for the signing ceremony. The air was thick with anticipation as they sat down with the German healthcare executives. This wasn't just a partnership, it was a symbol of MedAI's global ambitions. Lucas knew that if they could make this partnership work, it would open doors to the rest of Europe and beyond. The room fell silent as the deal was finalized. The excitement in the air was palpable, but Lucas couldn't shake the weight of the responsibility. This was just the first step. The real challenge lay ahead, executing the plan, scaling MedAI to meet the demands of the global market, and maintaining the trust of healthcare professionals and patients. Back in the US, the competition wasn't letting up. Alpha Health was making significant strides with its global initiative, and MedAI's success in Europe had not gone unnoticed. Rival companies were quick to follow suit, looking for their own global partnerships, and Lucas knew that the healthcare tech industry was about to become more crowded and more cutthroat. But rather than retreating into a defensive position, Lucas pushed forward. He believed in MedAI's mission, and the success in Europe gave him the confidence to take more risks. They needed to scale quickly. MedAI had to become a global name that was synonymous with trust, reliability, and innovation. Lucas gathered the team for another strategic meeting. The partnership with Germany is just the beginning. We need to move into other key regions. Asia's healthcare market is exploding right now, and we can't afford to wait. But we also need to make sure that we're not spreading ourselves too thin. We need the right partners who will help us scale with the same level of excellence that we've established here in the US. Cameron spoke up. We should also focus on leveraging local talent in each region. It's not just about tech, it's about building relationships. We need to make sure that the healthcare providers we work with understand MedAI's potential and trust our technology. Lucas nodded. Right. This isn't just about selling a product. It's about building long-term relationships and becoming a part of their healthcare systems. We can't just show up with our tech and expect it to work. We need to integrate with their workflows, understand their pain points, and offer real value. The team worked tirelessly to launch their campaigns across Europe and, soon after, into parts of Asia. With MedAI's technology already integrated into top-tier hospitals in Germany, the momentum began to shift. The results were tangible. MedAI's AI-driven system was helping doctors make more accurate diagnoses, reducing the time spent on administrative tasks, and most importantly, improving patient outcomes. The stories from the front line were powerful, and Lucas made sure that these successes were broadcasted around the world. But the battle was far from over. Alpha Health had not stopped advancing its own global initiative. Their next move came when they announced a groundbreaking partnership with a global healthcare giant, World Health Solutions, one of the largest health networks in the world. The partnership included the integration of Alpha Health's AI system into hospitals in Africa, Southeast Asia, and South America. It was a bold and ambitious move that threatened to overshadow MedAI's progress. Lucas felt the pressure mounting. This wasn't just a business competition anymore. It was about changing the global healthcare landscape, and it was clear that both companies were in a race to shape the future. But Lucas wasn't ready to give up. He and his team had worked too hard to let a single setback derail their progress. One evening, as the team gathered for a late-night brainstorming session, Lucas brought up a radical idea. We've been playing it safe. Maybe it's time we think bigger, bolder. We've made great strides in Europe, and we're starting to make waves in Asia. But what if we took a completely different approach to our expansion? Grace raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking, Lucas? We have Elon Musk behind us. Why not leverage his other ventures to give MedAI a massive push? Tesla, SpaceX. What if we integrate MedAI's technology with the global infrastructure they're building? Cameron looked intrigued. You're saying, take MedAI to Mars? Literally? Not just Mars, Lucas said with a smile. Think bigger. MedAI can be a part of every facet of the future, whether it's in space exploration, remote healthcare, or developing the technology to serve the next generation of healthcare systems. We have the opportunity to take this to the next level, integrating AI into industries that were previously untouched by healthcare technology. The room fell silent for a moment as the team processed the idea. Elon's influence and resources could open doors that no one had even considered, and Lucas knew that if they could align MedAI with the global tech giants pushing the boundaries of innovation, they would not just be changing healthcare. They would be shaping the future itself. And so, with that bold vision, Lucas knew that MedAI's journey was just beginning. There were still battles ahead, but with each new challenge, the company grew stronger. The global expansion would continue, and they were ready for the next big leap. The weeks following Lucas's bold idea had been nothing short of a whirlwind. MedAI's leadership team, buoyed by the potential of Elon's resources, had shifted its focus. Rather than simply competing in the traditional healthcare space, they aimed to revolutionize it by integrating MedAI's technology into other industries. The race was no longer just about healthcare. It was about shaping the future of humanity itself. Lucas had always believed that technology was more than just a tool. It was a force that could reshape society. With Elon Musk's vision of a multiplanetary future, he saw an opportunity to integrate MedAI into that very vision. They could take their AI system into the space sector, connect it with healthcare infrastructure in remote areas, and even explore how AI could be used to aid in future global challenges like pandemics, climate change, and space exploration. The initial response to this new direction was met with mixed emotions. Some members of the team were eager to embrace the idea, seeing it as an innovative leap that could set MedAI apart from every competitor. Others, however, were more cautious. Expanding MedAI beyond its current market required immense planning, infrastructure, and risk. But Lucas was resolute. He wasn't going to let this opportunity slip through their fingers. I've been speaking with Elon's team, Lucas announced during a meeting one morning, and they're on board. They're ready to help MedAI scale into new areas. But it's going to take every ounce of innovation and dedication we've got. Grace, always the pragmatic one, raised her concerns. What you're suggesting, going into space tech, remote healthcare, it's a massive leap. We have to make sure we don't lose sight of our core business. We've already got partnerships to maintain in Europe and Asia. If we spread ourselves too thin, we might risk the stability we've built. Lucas nodded. I understand the risk, but I think we're at a crossroads. We can either play it safe and hope to stay ahead of Alpha Health and others, or we can push beyond the boundaries of what's been done. MedAI was always meant to be more than just a tool for hospitals. It's meant to be a catalyst for change. And I believe that if we don't capitalize on this moment, someone else will. Cameron, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. We've always been innovators. We built MedAI with the idea of transforming healthcare. Now, it's time to show the world how it can do more, how it can change entire industries. If we can integrate MedAI into systems like Tesla's autonomous cars or SpaceX's Mars mission, we can prove that AI is not just for doctors and hospitals. It's for the future of humanity. The team spent the next several weeks retooling MedAI's business strategy. They'd already established themselves as a reliable partner in healthcare, but now it was time to approach industries that were traditionally untapped by AI technology. Lucas knew they couldn't just enter these fields without a clear understanding of the challenges and needs of each industry. So, they began reaching out to leaders in space exploration, autonomous transportation, and global sustainability to understand how MedAI's AI could be applied in those fields. The breakthroughs came quickly. Working with Elon's teams, MedAI was integrated into Tesla's system to help improve vehicle diagnostics, energy consumption patterns, and predictive maintenance. This marked the first major step in broadening MedAI's scope outside of healthcare. The system helped Tesla's AI analyze vast amounts of data to predict and prevent mechanical failures in their electric vehicles, reducing energy waste and improving safety. The media caught wind of the news, and soon, MedAI's name was being mentioned alongside Tesla in discussions about the future of technology. The next big leap came when MedAI's AI was integrated into SpaceX's Mars mission. The company had long faced challenges in predicting the health needs of astronauts in deep space, and MedAI's ability to analyze data and predict medical conditions based on environmental factors became an invaluable asset. Not only was MedAI's AI helping to monitor astronauts' health, but it was also used to create simulations for remote medical treatment. The possibilities were endless. While MedAI's presence in these industries was still in its infancy, the impact was immediate. It wasn't just about creating new products or services. It was about positioning MedAI as a visionary company that could influence multiple facets of the future. As the months passed, Lucas saw the company's position evolve from just a competitor in healthcare to a key player in the next wave of global technological transformation. MedAI was no longer just an AI tool. It was a symbol of what the future could look like when humanity embraced innovation on a massive scale. But as MedAI expanded its reach, the competition remained fierce. Alpha Health had not been idle. They, too, had begun developing AI solutions for the space industry, and their global healthcare initiative had gained significant momentum. The battle for supremacy in AI-driven technology was about to enter a new phase, one where the lines between healthcare, transportation, space exploration, and other industries blurred. Lucas knew that the next few years would be critical. They had already seen the impact of global expansion, but the challenge of maintaining leadership in this fast-evolving market was immense. Yet, the idea of what MedAI could achieve kept him focused. They were no longer just competing for a share of the healthcare market. They were changing the game entirely. In the end, Lucas knew one thing for sure. MedAI's journey was far from over. They had achieved things that no one had imagined possible when the company was founded, but the true revolution was still to come. By integrating AI into the very fabric of society, across industries and borders, MedAI would help shape the future in ways no one could predict. The revolution was here, and MedAI would be leading it every step of the way.